Hello and welcome to Lesson 1. This lesson is about present time. We'll talk about present simple, present continuous, state verbs versus action verbs, present simple versus present continuous. Let's begin. What is present simple? You should already be familiar with the structure of present simple. But when do we use present simple? We are going to talk about some situations in which we use present simple. For example, we use present simple to describe facts, something which is generally true. For example, our sun rotates, third person singular, present simple, around the center of the galaxy. Or it is, is in present simple. It is hot in the summer. We are stating a fact or two using present simple. Another use of present simple is to describe habits, something that happens on a regular basis or happens frequently. For example, I exercise, present simple, 3 times a week. We call this an adverbial phrase of frequency. This doesn't happen, the negative form of present simple. This doesn't happen often. Again, an adverb of frequency. This use of present simple is generally accompanied by an adverb of frequency or an adverbial phrase of frequency or something that shows frequency in your sentence. Another use of present simple is declarations. When you declare something, when you want people to know something about you. For example, you say, I hope you'll get better soon. You see, pay attention to the will after hope. I bet you cannot beat me. I declare this land mine. This is apparently a picture of Christopher Columbus, the first time landing in America and saying, I declare this land mine. It's like going to your neighbor's house and declaring their house yours. Anyway, present simple. News headlines. Ship sinks in midnight collision. You see, of course, it happened in the past, but we use present simple because it is common practice in news headlines. Protesters clash, present simple, with police. Now, look at this front page. This is the New York Times front page. One day after September 11. I don't know if you're old enough to remember that day, but that was a very crucial day in contemporary history. As you can see, it says, hijacked jets destroy, again, present simple, Twin Towers. Present simple. We use present simple to give instructions. If you want to sound more friendly, you don't say, do this, do that. You don't use imperatives. You say, you do this. You then do that. First, you roll out the pastry. This is apparently about a recipe. Then you leave it for an hour. You don't say, then leave it for an hour. Yeah, it's not a big deal, but present simple is friendlier. The next use of present simple is to describe timetabled events. Example, the bus arrives in an hour. Actually, we are talking about the future. We are using present simple for the future, but only for timetabled events. My flight takes off soon, present simple for the future, because there is a timetable for your flight. Or, she retires in 3 years. Again, there is a timetable for her retirement. There is a timetable for everybody's retirement, I think. Okay. The next use of present simple, we use present simple to tell jokes, to tell stories, or to talk about historical events. You want to tell a joke. You say, 2 men enter, present simple, a bar in the morning. I don't know the rest of the joke. You could complete it yourself. But a story. You're telling a story about a friend to another friend. You say, then he goes out without telling me. You're obviously talking about the past, but we use present simple because you are telling a story. Historical events. Alexander the Great, this guy, arrives. Yes, it was many years ago, but you use present simple because it is a historical event. Alexander arrives in Persia in 334 BC. Now let's talk about present continuous. Again, you should be familiar with the structure of present continuous. It's a very simple thing. We are talking about the functions, the uses of present continuous. First use is to talk about things going on right now. For example, happening at the moment of speaking. I'm teaching English grammar right now, literally. She is reading a history book these days. So, it doesn't need to be happening right now. It just needs to be going on right now. For example, these days I'm reading a novel, but I'm not doing it right now, but I could still use present continuous to describe it. Another use of present continuous is a very interesting one. We use it to describe arrangements in future. But remember, arrangement is your keyword. When something is arranged, you know what it means. It is not just an intention or a plan. They are getting married in June. When you say they are getting married in June, it doesn't mean that they are just talking about it. Like there hasn't been any proposals or anything. No. They have the guest list at least, or they have discussed the guest list and everything. All the families know about it. The friends know about it. So it is an arrangement in the future. Only in this case, you could use present continuous for future. He is leaving tomorrow. That's a definite thing. It is arranged. He's got the ticket for the flight and everything. Unless something goes wrong, that guy is leaving tomorrow. Another use of present continuous is to describe temporary situations. Example, when you say I'm staying in a hotel, of course, in a hotel everybody is, most people I think, will be staying temporarily. So we say, where are you staying? We are implying that I know this is a temporary arrangement. So we say, I'm staying at this hotel. But look, when you say, she's living in Melbourne for now, you don't need to say for now. When you say she's living in Melbourne, it means you're implying that she is not going to stay there for long. She's going to go somewhere else. But when I say I live in Melbourne or she lives in Melbourne, that's a permanent situation. Okay. We use present continuous to complain about annoying habits. Again, the key word in here is annoying and habit. So we talked about using present simple to talk about habits with adverbs of frequency. In here, we are using present continuous to talk about habits. And again, we use adverbs of frequency or adverbial phrases of frequency. But the thing is, the meaning is different. The tone is different. Listen to these examples. We say, she's always telling me what to do. You see, you're obviously complaining. So your tone needs to go with the meaning of your sentence. And you always use something like forever, always, all the time to emphasize your annoyance of the situation. Another example, they are calling me all the time. Obviously, she is frustrated by these calls. So tone is also important in here. Another use of present continuous is to describe a trend. A trend is something which is catching on over time. For example, the weather is getting better. You see, gradually, when something gradually changes, we could use present continuous to describe that trend, describe that the rate of that change. Another example, people are using present continuous social media more and more these days. More and more is an adverbial phrase which is very common when you are describing a trend. Or we say, for example, she is getting better and better. This is a form of emphasis. We'll talk about emphasis in one of our future lessons. Now, when it comes to verbs in English, we have different categorizations, okay? But in one categorization, we have two types of verbs. We have action verbs or dynamic verbs, and we have non-action or state verbs. What does that mean? Like, it means what it means. When you say action, it means it needs to involve some action. We say go, walk, cook, lift, pay, laugh, like, and so on. But non-action, say, for example, I believe you. There is no action happening in here. Or for example, I am a teacher. There is no action. It's just the state. So that's why we call it a state verb. Why am I telling you this? It's important to know the distinction between action verbs and non-action verbs, because look, don't use state verbs, it means non-action verbs, in progressive or continuous tenses. When I say don't do that, it is not set in stone like for all cases. Mostly, please avoid using non-action verbs in continuous form. Look, people say I believe you. They don't say I'm believing you. Okay? In some particular contexts, you may hear this. So I'm not saying that this is incorrect. I'm just saying that this is uncommon. Remember, in advanced grammar, we are beyond correct and incorrect. We are now discussing which one is good, which one is better, which one is best. Okay. Again, state or action verbs. Some verbs could be action or non-action, depending on the context and meaning. Look at these examples. So when we say, for example, this is an action verb or this is a state verb, it doesn't mean that they are always an action verb or a state verb. It depends on the context. Look, when you say I have a car, there is no action in here. So to have in here, it means to possess. It is non-action, obviously. So have in here is a non-action verb. You don't say I'm having a car unless you're eating your car. You could say I'm having lunch. In here, have means to eat. So have in here is a state verb and in here is an action verb. Another example, you are my guests. It means just to be. All right? You are being silly. You see, they are being silly in here because they are doing something. You can see the action that they are doing. Because in here, to be means to behave. You see, to be in here, non-action, to be in here, action. So it depends on the context and the situation. Okay, let's do one exercise together. Underline the correct choice. Look, I haven't decided yet about whether to buy a new car or a second-hand one, but I think about it, I'm thinking about it. Obviously, because you are doing the thinking activity, it is an action verb, but if you are saying that, for example, I think that was a good film, you're expressing your opinion. In that context, think is a non-action verb. The second exercise. All right. You try to fix the television, but I hope or I'm hoping you know what you're doing. This is declaration, and hope is a non-action verb in this context. So I hope, present simple. 3. Every year, this is frequency signal. I visit or I'm visiting. When you say every year, when something happens on a regular basis, we use present simple. I visit Britain to improve my English. Number 4, it's time we turned on the central heating. It's getting colder every day. You are describing a trend, so present continuous. Number 5, of course, you're Mary, aren't you? I recognize you. You don't say I'm recognizing you, because recognize in this context is a non-action verb. Number 6, the film of War and Peace is very long. Tell me about it. It lasts or it is lasting. It lasts. You're describing a fact. So present simple. And 7, that must be the end of the first part of the performance. What happens or what is happening now? We say what happens now. We are talking about a timetable in here. You know that when you go to a performance, to a play or whatever, there should be a timetable at least. So you could use present simple to ask about what comes after this. All right, that was our lesson 1. See you in lesson 2. Hello and welcome to lesson 2. In this lesson, we are talking about future time. We'll discuss will and how to use it, where to use it, be going to, present continuous for the future, future continuous, future perfect continuous, and other forms of future. Let's begin. Let's start with will. Will, we use it for the future, but in what situations? What are the uses of will in English? We are talking about that in this lesson. The first use of will is to make a prediction. You say, I'll be late for dinner tonight. You are making a prediction. Or, they will bring good news tomorrow. Again, it is another prediction. The next use of will is to make an assumption. Let's say someone is knocking on your door, or for example, your phone is ringing and you haven't seen who that is. You could say, that'll be Susan at the door or on the phone. You don't know, but you are assuming. So this is another use of will. The next use of will is to make an instant decision. For example, let's say you are in a restaurant and you are looking at the menu. You want to decide which food to have. You say, I'll have a big salad. You don't say, I have a big salad. I'll have a big salad, for instant decisions. Or for example, you are buying some clothes. You say, I'll take the blue jacket. For example, you want to choose between the blue jacket and the white jacket, and obviously you go with the blue jacket, and you say, I'll take the blue jacket. Will for instant decisions. Now, the next use of will is to make a promise. For example, I promise, actually it is very common with I promise. I promise I'll pay it back next week. And you know, this is probably the most broken promise in history of mankind. So, or he'll be a good boy. You are promising his teacher or his nanny or his mother or whatever. You are making a promise. Now, let's discuss be going to. We use be going to express our intentions and plans. This is different from arrangements, okay? Intentions, something you are thinking about doing. We are going to pay her a visit soon. And you see, after that, we always use the base form. Or you could say, we are gonna, in speaking, not in writing. We are gonna pay her a visit soon. It means we are thinking about it. We intend to do so. We are planning that. Or, she's gonna have a party next month. Again, there is no arrangement, but she is thinking about it, and she's thinking she's gonna do it. Another use of be going to is to make a prediction. Look, if you remember, just a few minutes ago, we talked about will and how to use it to express predictions. We use be going to express predictions too. Look, in lower levels of English grammar, it is no big deal. You could use be going to or will to make a prediction. But in advanced levels, there is a difference. Will is just a prediction, or you could call it an empty prediction, if you may. But when you use be going to, you are implying to your listeners that you have some evidence, you have a reason, whatever reason that might be, for your prediction. For example, we say, you're going to drop that bottle if you're not careful. You're watching someone carrying a bottle very carelessly. That is your evidence. You say, you're going to drop that bottle. Or, it's going to rain soon with those dark clouds. You look at the sky, you see the dark clouds, you make a prediction. The dark clouds are your evidence. It may rain or not, but you do have some evidence, apparently. Now, present continuous. This slide is the very same slide from our previous lesson, lesson 1. Arrangements in future. I brought it here because, you know, we are talking about future time, and we use present continuous to talk about arrangements in the future. They are getting married in June only if it is arranged. It means fixed. It means certain. I know nothing is certain in this world, but you say, for example, this is certain unless something terribly goes wrong. He's leaving tomorrow. So arrangements in the future. Now, let's talk about future continuous. Okay? Future continuous, because we are still using will, so it is a form of prediction. Prediction of an ongoing is your keyword because it is future continuous. Prediction of an ongoing future event. We say, tomorrow this time, you're predicting the future. But you don't want to say, tomorrow I will do this. It is not a prediction of an action. It is a prediction of an event which will be continuous. We say, tomorrow this time, I'll be swimming in the ocean. Or she'll be staying with us soon. You see, will be is the crucial part or element of future continuous and the ing form of your main verb. Look at this. We are here now. We are predicting a point in the future, and we are talking about this event or action which is going on, which is continuous at this point in the future. Now, future perfect, a very interesting one. Look back from a future point. We'll talk about present perfect in one of our future lessons soon, and we'll also talk about past perfect. They are not that different from each other. Look, when you have perfect, they are all the same. The only difference they have is the reference point. When you say, for example, I have read that book, it means from the first time I could read anything until the present moment. So it covers this whole duration. That's why we call it present perfect, because it ends right now. When you use past perfect, we'll talk about it in our future lessons. Your reference point is in the past. It means from the beginning of time until that moment in the past. Future perfect is the same, but you push your reference point to a point in the future. The structure is very interesting. Okay, you need to pay attention to the structure as well. We say, in 6 years, look, you are here now. You are assuming now it is 6 years in the future. Okay, now it is the future. You look back. What do you see? Okay, let's say if this is the future, the present moment, you use present perfect. But because it is a prediction in the future, you use future perfect. In 6 years, I'll, you see, will is there, have is your auxiliary verb, and main verb always in past participle form. It's a very interesting structure in English. I know it could be a bit scary in the beginning, but believe me, if you practice using it in your sentences, that's very useful because it clarifies your point when you're talking about the future. In 6 years, I'll have finished this book. It means you go to the future, you look back, and it's like you are there and you're saying that I have finished that book. But because you are not in the future, you say, I will have finished that book. By 2030, you see, by is a very common preposition in future perfect. COVID restrictions will, probably, we are adding an adverb in here before have. Will, probably, you see, will have, again, the same structure. Been lifted. We have added a been in here because this sentence is a passive. This is future perfect passive. And this is future perfect active. Don't worry, we'll talk about passive in lessons 5 and 6. Okay, so in here, you are here now. You assume yourself in 2 years from now. This, like finishing this book, could have happened at any of these points. It doesn't matter. The point of perfect tenses, past perfect, future perfect, present perfect, is that time of an event is irrelevant. Now, future perfect continuous. Future perfect continuous is basically the same as future perfect. But the thing is, we emphasize the duration in here. So whenever you see emphasis on the duration of something and you need to use future perfect continuous. Example, you see, with emphasis on duration. In 10 minutes, he'll have been talking for 3 hours. Interesting. Let's analyze this sentence. This is the present moment, okay? The guy started talking 2 hours and 50 minutes ago. Okay, he started talking, it's going on here, and say, if the guy continues talking for another 10 minutes, it means at this point in the future, which is in the future, he will have been talking. This been is not passive. This been, auxiliary verb number 1, auxiliary verb number 2, auxiliary verb number 3. Because this is future perfect continuous. Will is always there, have is always there, and been is always there. And the main verb is always in ing form. For 3 hours, you see the emphasis on duration? This is your clue that this must be future perfect continuous, not just future perfect. Now, we have some other future forms, apart from all these we talked about. Is to be or are to be. We use them to give instructions or to express arrangements or to announce arrangements or to convey obligations. We say all students are to report to the front desk. It means this is an instruction. So are to report, the base form, to the front desk. Or she is to be informed. This is the passive form. She is to be informed about the accident. And some other future forms, we use to be about to plus base form. We say the game is about to start, the base form. She is due to arrive, the base form, tonight. It means you expect her to arrive tonight. The train is just about to, you see, this is the same as this one. You just add an adverb in here, just. Is just about to leave. To be on the point of something. I'm on the point of sealing. This is a gerund because it is following a preposition. We'll talk about it again in our future lessons. Sealing a deal. He is on the verge of, it means it's going to happen soon. The same for this one. He is on the verge of, again, because this is a preposition, you need to follow it with a noun or a noun phrase or a gerund, like this example in here. A big break, which is a noun phrase. This was our lesson 2. See you in lesson 3. Welcome to lesson 3. In this lesson, we'll be talking about past time. We'll discuss past simple, past continuous, past perfect continuous, used to and would for past habits and states. Let's begin. Let's talk about past simple. You know what past simple is, how to make it, what is the structure of past simple, but how to use it. In what situations do we use past simple? We are talking about that here. We use past simple for finished actions at a specific time, specific past time. Example, I talked to Alan last night. There is always a time expression with past simple. Sometimes you cannot see the time expression. It is implied in the sentence, but it is always there. I saw him at the front desk. You don't see a time expression. You see a location expression. And you know that. We have known it for over 100 years, that time and space are basically the same thing. So, another use of past simple to talk about habits, states, and facts in the past. Habits is something that frequents or happens on a regular basis. She called me every Sunday. Every Sunday is your adverb of frequency. You could use past simple to talk about that habit in the past. We had a bigger house before. This is a state or a fact in the past. And before is your adverb for time. Gas was much cheaper 10 years ago. So again, a fact or a state in the past. Now, let's talk about past continuous. When do we use past continuous? We use it to describe events in progress at a specific past time. So, take a point in a specific past time, something that is going on at that point. Example, this is apparently from a police interrogation, for example. You have heard it a lot. like in movies. What were you doing at 8 last night? So 8 last night is a specific point in time last night, and the policeman is asking, like, what was going on at that moment of time? I was reading when you called me. When you called me is your specific time, okay? And I was reading is what was going on at that specific time. Again, another use of past continuous is to describe two continuous past events happening at the same time, like a very common occurrence. When I was calling him, he was calling me. So past continuous, because they were happening at the same time. The next use of past continuous, just like present continuous, which describes a trend in the present, we use past continuous to describe a trend in the past. We say the car was getting worse every time. You see, you don't only use past continuous to discuss the trend. You have other signs, other implications, like worse, like every time. Her health was gradually improving. Again, gradually improving. You are describing a trend in the past. Now, another use of past continuous is to talk about annoying past habits. Remember, present continuous, we used it for the same purpose, accompanied by adverbs of frequency. Look, he was always complaining. In here, the tone of the sentence goes up. He was always complaining. You're annoyed. You're complaining about something. You're complaining about somebody else's complaining. She was forever asking stupid questions. Again, the tone goes up and it shows you are not happy about this situation. Past forms in narratives. What does that mean? A narrative is a story. When you tell a story, stories, especially when you're talking about an anecdote of yours, a personal story, you use past forms. But how to use past forms? We generally use past simple and past continuous, yes, and other forms we'll discuss today. We use past simple to describe main events. A main event is something that changes the course of the story. A main event is something that your audience is waiting for. We use past continuous to describe background events. A background event is something that you are picturing an image for your audience to prepare them for the main event. Let me give you an example. Yesterday, I was walking. It's still not interesting to the listener. Okay, you were walking. When I saw Tara, okay, now something changed. You see, background, I was walking. I saw, past simple, Tara. This is your first main event. She was talking on the phone. What was happening? Background situation, and didn't notice me. Okay, this is what I wanted to hear. Did she notice you or didn't she notice you? So again, past simple for main events when you're telling a narrative or a story or an anecdote, and past continuous for background events. Now let's talk about past perfect, my favorite one. You remember we talked about future perfect in our previous lesson, and I told you the concept is basically the same when it comes to present perfect, which is our next lesson. Present perfect, past perfect, future perfect. The only difference is your reference point in time. Past perfect, sometimes they call it past in the past, but what does that mean? Let me clarify it for you. When you go back in a story, look, this is a very clear example. Listen carefully. I walked to the door. We call this your first main event. You decide where to begin your story, okay? So you could change the beginning point of the story, and then, of course, you're going to need to use different tenses. So it is your choice where to begin your story. I walked to the door, the first main event. You see, walk to the door. Reached into my pocket, the next main event, past simple. Then realized, past simple, the next main event, that I had forgotten my keys. Because forgetting happens here, you are going back in your story. So you need to use past perfect. All right? Now, past perfect continuous. Just like future perfect continuous, when the emphasis is on the duration of an event or an activity, we use past perfect continuous. Example. When the pilot started talking, we had already been flying for about 3 hours. For about 3 hours is the emphasis on the duration. So this is an implication of your using past perfect continuous. We say, look, had is the first auxiliary verb for past perfect continuous, been is the second auxiliary verb, and flying is your main verb in ing form. Let's say you are here, all right? You're looking back to the past. You say, all right, so the flight started here at this point, and then at this point, the pilot started talking after 3 hours. So you say, when the pilot started talking here, we had been flying for about 3 hours. Now, let's talk about used to, a very common one in English. We use used to talk about habits, something that happens frequently, and states in the past. Example, I used to be a civil engineer. That is actually true. I did used to be a civil engineer. So, used to, you see, ed to be, the main verb, in base form. This is one of the uses of used to. We are describing a state or a fact in the past. She didn't used to read much. It means she didn't have that habit. Look, pay attention to this. When you use didn't, you don't use used anymore. So didn't used to read much. Now, we also use would to talk about habits in the past. Look, this is only one of the functions of would. Would is a modal verb and it has a lot of other functions. We'll talk about it in 1 or 2 or 3 of our future lessons. But today we are talking about would for past habits. Reminiscing. What is the meaning of reminiscing? When you think about the good old days, those were the days. We call that reminiscing. And only action verbs. If you remember in here, with used to and would are basically the same in this context. But there is a big difference between them. With used to, you could use action or non-action verbs. You could describe habits or states in the past. But you cannot use would to describe states in the past. Example, we would play in the park every day when I was a kid. You're talking about a habit you had in the past. And play is an action verb. You are describing something that you did in the past. But look here, this is incorrect. You cannot say that we would have a beautiful house, because have in here is a state verb. All right? You could say we used to have a beautiful house. That's correct. But no would. Would only goes with action verbs in this context. Now, unfulfilled past events. Unfulfilled, what does that mean? It means it didn't happen. Someone wanted it to happen, but it didn't happen. Events intended to take place, but didn't. I was going to call you. When someone says, I was going to do that, you know that they didn't do that, all right? And the base form, after I was going to. He was thinking of applying. It means he didn't apply. She was about to make a left turn. You see, she obviously didn't finish that left turn. Something with the color blue stopped her. I was to have joined, the past participle form, the military. It means you didn't do that. For example, you say, she was to have got married, for example, at that time. It means she didn't get married at that time. All right, this was our lesson 3. See you in lesson 4. Welcome to lesson 4. In this lesson, we'll be talking about present perfect. Present perfect simple. What is present perfect simple? What is present perfect continuous? And what is the difference between present perfect and past simple? Let's begin. When do we use present perfect? Again, you should know the structure of present perfect. Have, has, plus past participle. But when do we use it? What are the functions of present perfect in the language, English language? The first use of present perfect is finished past events. Finished past events, just like past simple. But what is the difference? Without a definite time. It is the opposite of past simple. In the past simple, you always have a definite time, implied or specified. Present perfect, there is no definite time because time is unimportant. It is irrelevant. You don't care about time when you use present perfect. Specified or implied. Look, she has found what she was looking for. No one cares when. We only care about the result of the situation. We have, or we've, the contracted form. We've already been to that restaurant. Let's say this is the present moment. From the beginning of time, like you could say since that time, or for example, a period of time. If you don't use since or for, it means from the beginning of time. You say, for example, yeah, I have talked to him 3 times. It means from the beginning of the time until now. But when you say I have talked to him 3 times since 2020, yeah, then you put a beginning to that period of time. This is one of the uses of present perfect. Another use of present perfect is to describe something that started in the past and is still going on. When you say, he has lived here for 50 years, he's still living there. We haven't talked since 2010. All right? So because it means we're still not talking. Or at least we don't know that. You need to listen to the continuation of the sentence to realize what the hell is going on. So, another use of present perfect is habitual actions. Again, something that happens on a regular basis over a period of time up to the present moment. Example, I have visited her at the hospital every week since April. All right. So sometimes it is a continuous event. For example, I have lived here for 50 years and it is still going on. Sometimes it is a frequent event. I have talked to him every Friday since 2010. Another use of present perfect, a very interesting one. Emphasis on completion of an event. Let me give you 2 examples, okay? In one of the examples, I'm just going to use present simple. In the other one, present perfect. And I'm going to explain what is the meaning of emphasis on completion of an action. Example, the mother is talking to her daughter. You can play when you finish your homework, okay? It means play after you finish your homework. There is no emphasis in here. It is just one event after another. The succession, the progression of the events, one after the other. But when you use present perfect, you are changing the meaning of your sentence. When you say, you can play when you've finished your homework, it means I won't allow you to play if you don't finish your homework. It means emphasis on completion of your homework in this situation. Now, the difference between present perfect and past simple. This is like a lot of students make mistakes in here, so listen very carefully. There is always a time expression with past simple. Again, hidden or obvious, implied or specified. I bought the car at the dealer's shop. Time expression implied. At the dealer's shop is a location, and again, time and space are basically the same thing. Past simple. But you cannot say I have bought the car at the dealer's shop or I have bought it 2 days ago. That is utterly wrong. You cannot use a specified time or a specific time or an implied time or location with present perfect. I have bought a car. Time is irrelevant and no one cares. If you want to say the time, you use past simple. I have bought a car. Oh, really? When? I bought it 2 days ago or last week. Past simple. Now, this is really interesting, okay? This might be the most important slide of this lesson. Another difference of present perfect and past simple is that when you use present perfect, your emphasis is on the result of a situation. When you use past simple, you're talking about the action of a situation. I lost my wallet. You're telling a story. When you say, yeah, yesterday I lost my wallet, then 2 hours later someone called me and returned it to me. This is a story, all right? Action. The action of losing your wallet is important. You're telling that story to your audience. But look, when you say, I have lost my wallet, what does that mean? It means I have no wallet. You need to pay for me. What is the result of this situation? Having no wallet, having no money. You see, this is what I mean by saying present perfect emphasizes the result, not the action. Present perfect continuous. A continuous or frequent activity which started in the past and is still going on. You see, it is sometimes very similar to present perfect simple. For example, you could say, I have lived here for 3 years. It means it started 3 years ago and it is still going on. Or you could say, I have been living here for 3 years. The same meaning. Well, almost the same meaning. But, so you should know this. Sometimes they are almost the same, sometimes not. Example, I have been shopping all morning. It means it could be still going on, or it could have finished. We don't know. You need to listen to the rest of the sentence to decide. She has been practicing regularly. It means, unless you say it, we would assume that it is still going on. Now, the next one, present perfect continuous, very similar to the previous one. A continuous or frequent activity which started in the past and ended recently. Recently is your keyword, all right? Your eyes are red. Have you been crying? That person is not crying. Only the eyes are red, okay? Because it ended recently, we could use present perfect continuous. I've been cleaning my room. I've just finished, okay? If you don't see the room, if it is cleaned or not, if that person doesn't continue with speaking, you wouldn't know if it is done or not. Then we'll go back to the previous function of present perfect continuous, like it is still going on, or we assume it is still going on. But it could have finished, but if it is finished, it needs to have finished very recently. And recent is a subjective term. It is a relative term. It doesn't mean like a few seconds or a few minutes. It could be a few centuries. It depends on the context of time you are considering. And this was our lesson on past time. See you next time. Welcome to lesson 5. We are talking about passives in this lesson. This is passive part 1. In our next lesson, we'll continue talking about passives. Listen very carefully. Today, we'll talk about like the philosophy of passive. What is passive? And what is the difference between an active sentence and a passive sentence? Why do we use passive? What is the point of using something that apparently a lot of people have problem making them? And what is the agent and what is the difference between an agent and an instrument? And what is the difference between transitive verbs and intransitive verbs? Let's begin. First, we need to define a term or two terms. You must be already familiar with subject in a sentence. what is the difference between subject and agent? If I want to explain to you what is the difference between an active sentence and a passive sentence, you need to know this distinction. What is a subject? What the sentence is about. Okay? My car is being washed. What is a subject? My car is your subject. She is driving. What is a subject? She is the subject. She is driving. This is simple. Now, what is the agent? Again, it's very simple too. Agent, or we have two other names for agent. Sometimes we call it the doer or the performer. Does the action in the verb. Look, my car is being washed. My car is the subject. But who is washing my car? You need to find the main verb. The main verb is washing. Okay, now we need to look for a person or thing which is, or that is doing the washing. Okay, my car is obviously not doing the washing. Someone we don't know who is not in this sentence is doing the washing. So we say the subject is my car, the agent is unknown. She is driving. The subject is she, and who is doing the driving? She is doing the driving. So agent is she. So subject and agent both are the same thing. Now, why did we learn about an agent and a subject? This is the difference between an active sentence and a passive sentence. In an active sentence, the subject and the agent are the same. We hired some new employees. We is the subject and agent, so it is an active sentence. Someone gives you a sentence and says, okay, is this active or passive? The first thing you need to do is to find the main verb, okay? Then find the subject. Then ask yourself, is the subject doing the action in the main verb? It means, is the subject also the agent? If the answer is yes, your sentence is active. If not, your sentence is passive. Look at this. A subject and agent are two different things. I was hired by a big company. I is the subject, obviously. But a big company is the agent because a big company did the hiring. So it is a passive sentence. It is as simple as that. Let's take a look at the passive structure. In an active sentence, we say, he cleaned the room. All right? You always need to have an object. Otherwise, it cannot be turned into a passive sentence. He is the subject, cleaned the room. This is an active sentence. He is the subject and also the agent. Cleaned is the main verb in past simple form, and the room is the object. Now, someone says, could you write this sentence in passive form? What do? You bring the object here and use it as the subject. And then you use a form of to be verb. I'll talk about it. In every passive sentence, there is a form of to be verb. We call it the passive to be. The room was cleaned. You could mention the agent or not. Sometimes it is necessary to mention the agent. Most times it is not necessary to mention the agent. If it is not necessary, don't bother. So, the room is the subject. Was, we call it passive to be. We'll talk about passive to be a little bit further today. Cleaned is the main verb, but in past participle form. Always, in a passive sentence, the main verb comes in past participle form, no exception. And him is the agent. Now, let's take a look at another example in a different tense. The other one, this one was in past simple, past simple, past simple. You don't change the tense. Remember, you are just turning active to passive or vice versa. Don't touch the tense. If you touch the tense, you are changing the meaning of the sentence, all right? So, if your active sentence is passive, past simple, this needs to be past simple too. Now, another example. She has already sent all the letters. This is in present perfect. So your passive sentence must be in present perfect too. She is the subject. You need to do this first if you want to write the passive form. She is the subject. Sent is the main verb in past form in here. In past participle form because it is in present perfect. And all the letters is your object. What do we do first? We bring the object and use it as the subject of the passive sentence. All the letters, okay. Now we need to use a have or has because it is a present perfect sentence, right? She is singular, so we use has. But in here, all the letters is plural, so obviously we use have. Already, just an adverb. Okay, don't pay attention to it. Have been, this is passive to be. Sent, past participle of the main verb. By her, the agent. You could mention it or not. You see, all the letters is the subject. Have been is the passive to be. Look, if you have a present perfect sentence, this have or has needs to be there. Like, of course, it is the meaning of present perfect. It needs to have a have or a has, just like past perfect, which always has a had. Sent is the main verb in past participle because your sentence is a passive sentence. Look, this is in past participle because this is present perfect. This is in past participle because this is passive. You see? And past participle and her is the agent. Passive to be. What is passive to be? I told you in every passive sentence, we must have a to be form. Actually, it is not possible to write a passive sentence without a passive to be. We always have a form of to be in passive. The form of passive to be depends on the tense of the sentence. Pay attention to this. The roof was being fixed. This is in past continuous because was being, both of them. This was is your auxiliary verb for past continuous. This being is your passive to be. You see, we have two to be's in here, was and being, but one of them is serving the tense past continuous. The next one is serving your passive. We will be invited to the ceremony. This is future simple. This will is contributing to your future simple. This be is contributing to your passive. This is your passive to be. And again, no exception, all the verbs, all the main verbs in past participle form. She was hired last week. This is past simple. See, was or were. She was hired. You'll have been rescued by them. This is future perfect. This will belongs to future perfect. This have belongs to future perfect. This been belongs to passive. Rescued, main verb, past participle form. Now, another distinction we need to know about. The difference between an agent and an instrument. Agent is introduced by the preposition by. You see, whenever you want to introduce the agent, you say, for example, this room was cleaned by Mr. X. He was escorted out by the agent. It means by the guards. It means the guards escorted him out. Instrument is an object that we use to do something. It is introduced by with. Look at this example. The door was unlocked by her, the agent, with a key, the instrument. Sometimes someone gives you a sentence, an active sentence. The active sentence has two objects. Now asks you, write this into passive form. Which object do you use to write the passive form? Either one would be fine. Active. They gave her an award. They, subject, gave, main verb, past simple. Her, object number one, an award, object number two. Now, let's use object number one to write the passive sentence. We say, she was given, past simple. We don't change it. She was given an award, you see? By them, not necessary because it is unknown. Who are they? Or you could use an award, object number two, as your subject in your passive sentence. An award was given to her. Again, by them, the agent. Was given to her. You don't change the tense. It is still in past simple. Another distinction we need to know about is the distinction between transitive verbs and intransitive verbs. This is one categorization of English verbs. Some verbs are transitive, some verbs are intransitive. Now, what is the difference? Transitive verbs have an object. we call it transitive because it transitions the action from the verb onto the object. That is why we call it a transitive verb. She's preparing the document. Whenever you have a transitive verb, you could expect an object, okay? But an intransitive verb needs no object. I'm walking. What is your object? It doesn't exist, all right? This is obvious, but I need to say it anyway. Intransitive verbs cannot be used in passive. This is common sense. If you don't have an object, how are you supposed to write a passive sentence? Okay, so it is obvious, but you need to know about this. What is the philosophy of using a passive sentence? All right, we must have strong reasons to use passive voice. What are these strong reasons? The first reason could be the agent is unknown or unimportant. All right, we say the hotel rooms are cleaned every day. It's unimportant. Who cares? Or who cleans your room? Who cares? You just care about the cleanliness of the room. So it is unknown or unimportant. In here, you don't say someone cleans this room every day. That's ridiculous. Someone is unknown. So it is not a good sentence. Sometimes the agent is obvious. You say he was arrested yesterday. You don't say, oh, who arrested him? Of course, the police. Yeah, we're talking about like a society governed by the law. So yeah, in such a society, only the police do the arresting. So it is obvious. The agent is obvious. Sometimes subject is more important than the agent. This is, again, crucially important. Let's say, look at this example. It says AC current, the electricity, alternate current, was invented by Nikola Tesla. All right, this is a passive sentence. What is the subject? Subject is your AC current. What is your agent? Agent is Nikola Tesla. Look, let's say you have two Wikipedia pages. One Wikipedia page, the title is AC current. The other Wikipedia page, the title is Nikola Tesla. So, on the first one, when the title is AC current, you tend to begin your sentences with AC current. All right? So the subject, that's why we call it the subject. It is what you are talking about. We all of a sudden, in the middle of the text, don't change the subject and don't say, when we are talking about AC current this, AC current this, we don't say all of a sudden, Nikola Tesla invented AC. No, it is not consistent, okay? As a matter of fact, you need to be consistent with your subject. So if you're talking about AC current, you begin your sentences with AC current. If you're talking about Nikola Tesla or whatever else, you begin your sentences with that. Now, this one is especially important for those who are interested in academic writing, because academic writing is all about passive. We rarely use active voice in academic writing, because when you need, the academic text needs to be impersonal, not personal. You don't say, I did that in an academic paper, or we did that. You say, that thing is done, or this thing will be done. Academic and formal texts. Then, for example, let's say this is the description of an experiment in a laboratory. You don't say, then I mixed the water with the chemicals. That's completely unaccepted in an academic text. You need to use the passive voice. You need to say, then the water is mixed or will be mixed with the chemicals. Now, passive with complement. What does that mean? Some verbs come with a complement. Look, we elected her the president. We call this the complement of the verb elect. They consider him crazy. We call this the complement of the verb crazy. Look, the complement could be a noun, the president. The complement could be an adjective, crazy. We call it a complement either way. In passive, complement comes immediately after verb. Let's say we want to write these active sentences into passive voice. We say, We elected her the president. Okay, her is the object. We say she was elected, past simple. She was elected. You don't say elected as the president. She was elected the president immediately after the main verb. Active. They consider him crazy. Him, object. He is, because it is present simple. You keep it present simple. He is considered crazy immediately. He is considered, main verb in past, participle form, crazy. All right, this was our lesson on the first part of our lesson on passive. See you next time. Welcome to lesson 6. Today is our second part of passives. Look, in our previous lesson, we talked about the structure of passive, the philosophy of passive, and in what situations we use passives. Today, we are going to talk about passives with have or get, when you cause something to happen. And we are going to talk about reporting verbs and verbs with prepositions. Let's begin. Passive with have or get. Listen, I'm going to explain to you the structure of passive with have or get, and then we'll talk about the situations in which we use this structure and also the philosophy behind this structure. So be patient, please. The structure. We start the sentence with the subject. Look, this is very important. Although it is very simple if you look at it, but I don't know, a lot of my students, have always struggled with this structure. I don't know why. I think if you listen carefully to this one, it's going to be very simple to you. So, the sentence starts with a subject. Then we have a form of have or get. When we say a form of have or get, it means like the form based on the tense, like present perfect, past simple, future continuous, and so on. Have or get have little difference in this context. And then we have the object. Immediately after have or get, we have the object. And then we have the past participle of the main verb. Just like any other passive sentence, the form of the main verb must be in past participle. So look, in two distinct or different situations, we use this structure, all right? What is the first situation? When the subject causes something to happen. You see, the subject is the recipient of the action in a passive sentence. But in passive have or get, the subject causes something to happen. What does that mean? Look, it says, I, subject, had, the past simple form of have, my car, object, fixed, past participle, by a mechanic. You could add the agent or not. We talked about it in our previous lesson. So, I had my car fixed. You see, you pay the mechanic to fix your car for you. So that's why we say the subject is causing the action to happen. Now, there is another use which is similar to this one, but not the same. When something happens outside subject's control, something happens to the subject. The subject is the recipient of the action in the main verb, but it was outside his or her control. Look at this example. We say, she's had her leg broken while skiing. So she is the subject. Has had is the past participle. Is because this is present perfect. So we need to use the auxiliary verb for present perfect. Has had, a form of have or get, her leg, the object, broken, past participle of the main verb. And obviously, we don't say she caused this to happen. This happened outside the subject's control. Okay, now, let me explain what the hell this is. Look, I have 4 sentences in here, which basically mean the same. Yeah, they don't mean the same, but they are trying to convey the same message. Let's see which message is the clearest. That is the point of learning grammar. You want your messages to be as clear as possible. So, the first sentence is an active sentence. I fixed my teeth. Sometimes people talk like that. Of course, they didn't fix their own teeth. Some dentists did it, but they say it. I fixed my teeth yesterday. but I didn't do it. So it is not the clearest way possible to convey this message. Let's do it in a different way. We say, the dentist fixed my teeth. Okay, what's wrong with this sentence? This is an active sentence. We call it a weak subject. You need to have a strong reason to choose a subject for your sentence. Who is the dentist fixed my teeth? The dentist is not the subject of the speech in here, is it? So it is not a good idea to use it as the subject of your sentence. We call it a weak subject. Let's do it in a third way. We say, my teeth were fixed. A passive form. All right? So what is wrong with this one? Again, we call it weak subject. Your tooth doesn't have a personality to have like such a status in your sentence as the subject of your sentence. It comes like, let's go to the fourth option, which comes from the egotism of human beings. We want to be the subject of the sentences we are saying. So how do we do that? We use that structure we talked on previous slide. We say, okay, now it is working because the subject of the sentence is I. I had or got my teeth fixed. Now it feels right. This is the philosophy behind this structure. So that is why we use it. To get or to be. Look, get could be used instead of be in passive, in spoken English. This is a different matter. Sometimes you hear it in spoken English, especially in movies. They say, for example, I got sick of you, instead of saying I became sick of you. Or it got me really happy, instead of saying it made me really happy. But in here, we are talking about like using get instead of be in passives. The criminals were arrested. We say the criminals got arrested. It basically means the same because, you could use get with any adjective or anything that works like an adjective. In this case, it is the past participle of the main verb. Now, reporting verbs. Listen. With verbs such as believe, know, say, think, report, we have a lot of them. These are the most common ones. A passive construction is used to avoid a weak subject. We already know what a weak subject is. And to give a generalized opinion. Let me explain on an example. Look, it says, people think he's living in Bogota, in Colombia. Okay? People think he's living in Bogota. This could never be a good sentence because, you are using a subject with which you are not completely familiar. Who is people? Who are people? So it is unclear. We call it a weak subject, especially if you're writing an essay. You can never use such a sentence in your essay. People think he's living in Bogota. Okay, now we are talking about the subject of the speech is he. We are talking about him in this context. So we say the subject of the speech. So the subject of the speech should be the subject of the sentence. We say he. Okay, now how do we fix it? We use a passive structure. And we pay attention to the tense of the original sentence. We say people think, present simple. He is thought, present simple. Don't change the tense. If you change the tense, you are changing the meaning of the sentence. He is, this is passive to be, previous lesson. He is thought, past participle. He is thought to be, infinitive, to be living in Bogota. And this is very common, especially when you are reporting something, especially like in a newspaper or on the news, you hear such sentences. Now, look, a similar topic, present reference. Passive followed by present infinitive or present continuous infinitive. Now we are expanding on what we discussed in our previous slide. All right, so we got familiar or we became familiar with the reporting verbs and how and why we use them. Now we are explaining, we are going deeper into this matter. We say passive followed by present infinitive or present continuous infinitive. Vitamin C is known. We say people know that vitamin C is good for you. All right, now, but in here we are talking about vitamin C. We say vitamin C is known to be, we call it present infinitive, good for treating colds. Present infinitive or just infinitive, we call it infinitive. But sometimes this infinitive form has a progressive form. They are believed, we are talking about them. They are, this is passive to be, believed, past participle of the reporting verb, to be hiding. When you use present continuous infinitive, it is always to be, because you want to use the ing form, so this needs to be. To be. So, to be hiding in the mountains. These are two most common forms we use this reporting thing. All right. Now, in present, with present references. Now, sometimes you are reporting something that happened in the past. That is slightly different. Passive followed by past infinitive, okay, and or past continuous infinitive. So in the previous one, with present references, we had present infinitive and present continuous infinitive. It is past infinitive and past continuous infinitive. Example, we say people believe he has left Brazil. Again, a weak subject, an active sentence, not a good idea to be used like in anything. Let's fix it. We say he is believed because, again, it is in present simple. He is believed. Look, these are two different clauses. Clause number one, he is believed. Okay, this one is not a past reference. This part, this second part is a past reference, because we say people believe, present simple, he has left Brazil. This is present perfect, but we call it present perfect. We're talking about something which happened in the past. That is why we call it past reference. He is believed, instead of to leave Brazil, to have left. We call it past infinitive. To have left, to have done, to have gone, to have seen. We are saying that this happened in the past. Look, one example with past continuous infinitive. He was reported, this is not the same thing, this is a different sentence. Look, I'm just saying that this clause in here and the following clause are irrelevant to each other in terms of tense, okay? So in here you could use past perfect, past simple, present continuous. He is being reported, but in here you could still use to have been embezzling money. So these are independent clauses from each other. Don't confuse them. When we say past references, we mean the second part of this sentence, to have been embezzling money. We call this past continuous infinitive. To have been are always there. We don't change that. To have been doing, to have been reading, to have been studying. We call it past infinitive, past continuous infinitive. Okay, verbs with prepositions. The preposition comes at the end of the sentence in passive. It's very simple. Look, some verbs have dependent prepositions. It always comes with them, like this one. Someone broke into my house. Broke into my house. This is a phrasal verb or a verb with preposition, because the verb without this preposition doesn't make sense. It has a completely different meaning. Or you could say, my house, the passive form, was broken into. We bring it at the end of the sentence when we use this phrasal verb or verb with preposition in the passive form. Now, let's discuss some prepositions we use in a passive structure. Let's start with with. With is used after verbs such as fill, pack, crowd. These are the most common ones, of course. Look at this one. We say the train was packed with morning commuters. Look, it doesn't mean that you couldn't say the train was packed by morning commuters, but by is exclusive to the agent. So when you are using by, you are assigning some agency to the party you are bringing after by. Simply, when you say by somebody, it means that somebody is the active agent in here. But in here, it is not the active agent. We are not talking about like people as active agents occupying or packing the train. Anyway, it depends on what exactly you want to say. The verbs such as cover, surround, decorate can use with or by. Cover can also be followed by in. The furniture was covered in dust, you could say, or the furniture was covered with dust. Of course, again, you could say the furniture was covered by dust, but you are giving dust agency. You're saying dust has a personality and is the agent of my sentence, which is not the case, okay? So that is why you need to be precise when you are using prepositions in your passive. Okay, this was our lesson. Do the exercises attached to this lecture and ask me any questions you have in Q&A section. See you next time. Welcome to lesson 7. We are talking about conditionals today. So, we'll discuss zero conditional, first conditional, second conditional, third conditional, and mixed conditional. Let me explain something to you first. We have all these numbers to make things easier to understand. Like, this is not mathematics or physics. We cannot say, oh, this should be first conditional, this should be second conditional. You will realize after I explain it to you that, like, a conditional just needs to sound normal and natural. It is not, again, mathematics. It is not set in stone. We are using these numbers and these structures to make things clearer, all right? So we have a lot of other forms of conditionals. These are not the only forms of conditionals in English or in any other language for that matter. Let's begin. Let's start with zero conditional. What is considered true? Okay? When something is true or when something is considered true in the present situation, we say politicians don't care, present simple, if millions die, present simple. So in here, we mix present with present. It is generally present simple with present simple, but it could be present continuous with present continuous. For example, you say, you don't like somebody is driving. You say, if he is driving, I'm not coming. So this is something that you want to say that this is the rule. This is what I believe in. And look in here. I'm also going to explain the punctuation in here because politicians don't care. We call it the consequence of the conditional. If millions die is the condition. When you bring the condition second, you don't need a comma in between. But if you bring the condition first, you have to use a comma. We'll have examples. So, another form of zero conditional could be in the past. What was considered true? Basically the same thing. Whenever the US invaded a country, comma, you see, because whenever is your condition word. You don't have to use if all the time, obviously. You could use whenever, when, and so on. Whenever the US invaded a country, past simple, it ended up in disaster. So past plus past. Again, it could be past continuous, it could be past simple. Let's talk about first conditional. With the first conditional, we are talking about a real present situation. What does that mean? It is real. Oh, look. The condition is in present. It could be different present forms. But the consequence, you could use different modal verbs like will, may, should, can, or you could use an imperative form. They have different meanings. It doesn't mean that you could use them interchangeably, like each one of them brings their own family of meanings. Look, example. If you're vaccinated, present simple, comma, because you brought the if clause first, you may survive COVID. So, they'll give in. Give in, it means to surrender. If you persist, present simple, will, all right? And because you brought the if clause second, you don't need a comma in between. If you don't like your job, comma, present simple, you should choose another one. Like, What does that mean when we say it is a real situation? It is a real situation in the mind of the speaker. Look at this example. When you say, if you don't like your job, it means you really think that that person doesn't like her job or his job. So that is why we call it a real situation. It is not like, for example, real for everybody. It is real to the speaker, okay? So the second conditional, we'll see the distinction between the first conditional and the second conditional, and a real situation and an imaginary or a hypothetical situation. A hypothetical means unreal. It means something you are assuming. A hypothetical present situation. Okay, now we use a past form in the condition, and then we use would, could, or might in the consequence, plus the base form of the main verb. If people cared more, comma, past simple, it might be a better world. Why do we call it a hypothetical situation? Look, in many situations, it is your choice to use the first conditional or the second conditional. Why do I say this? Because the listeners, the persons or people who are listening to you, they get your message based on the structure you are using. You don't need to explain what you are saying. You just need to use the right conditional. When you use the first conditional, the listeners think that, oh, this guy thinks this is a real situation. But when you use the second conditional, the listeners assume that you are talking about a hypothetical or an unreal situation, okay? So that needs to be clear in your own mind as the speaker. So when you say, if people cared more, this is a pessimistic point of view. You are saying that people don't care. You could use this in the first conditional. You could say, if people care more, it means you are optimistic about the future of people. It means, yeah, people are capable of caring more. But in here, this sounds more pessimistic. People don't care enough. Another example, if I were you, second conditional is very common when you want to give advice to somebody. And this is a very common form. If I were you, we don't have was in conditionals. I'll talk about it in subjunctive and unreal. Okay, if I were you, I'd see a doctor. This is the contracted form for would. Comma in here because we brought the condition first. But I'm not you. If I were you, it means obviously I'm not you. This is not only a hypothetical situation. We also call it an impossible situation. Okay, now third conditional. Third conditional is pretty straightforward and simple. It is a hypothetical past situation. You know what? Let's go back to the second conditional. I want to explain something else. Look, you see this one? It is in past simple. We call it fake past, or we call it subjunctive form. It is not a real past. That is why the second conditional is the most confusing conditionals to English learners, because it is in the past, but it means the present. That is why it is confusing. But let me assure you, if you practice long enough, if you practice saying them, second conditionals, and if you get the meaning of second conditional, it's going to become to you naturally after a while. Third conditional is a hypothetical, again, unreal, but past situation. The second conditional was hypothetical present situation. This is hypothetical past situation. In the condition we use, or in the if clause, we use past perfect. And in the consequence, we use would, could, might, plus have. Have in here is the auxiliary verb. It means you need to follow it with a past participle form. If I had applied for that job, it means I didn't apply for that job. Comma, I would have got is your main verb. I would have got it. It means I didn't apply. You know, we use the third conditional to express regret in many situations. I could have called somebody if I had had a phone. You cannot say if I had a phone, because when you say if I had a phone, it means you're talking about the current situation, right now. If I had a phone, I would call him. It means now. It means now I don't have a phone. But when you say if I had had a phone, this is past perfect. It means you're talking about a past situation in which you didn't have a phone. Mixed conditional. A mixed conditional is generally a combination of the second conditional and the third conditional. Sometimes the condition belongs to the second, the consequence to the third, and sometimes vice versa. Hypothetical past, present result. Look, again, it's common sense. If you listen to the example, it's obvious why it is called mixed conditional, because part of it belongs to the past and part of it belongs to the present. Look, if he hadn't stolen the car, okay, until here you assume this is a third conditional, because the condition is in past perfect. But let's continue reading. It says, comma, he wouldn't be okay. This doesn't look like a third conditional, because the third conditional is would have or wouldn't have been. This looks like a second conditional, the consequence in the second conditional. So this is a mixed conditional. Why do we use it? Because if he hadn't stolen the car, stealing the car happened in the past. But him being in prison is right now. You see, that is the difference. We are saying that, yeah, I'm sure that he did it. Now, the vice versa form. Sometimes it is the other way around. Hypothetical present and past events. Past, or fake past, plus would, could, might, plus have. Look, if she were a good doctor, this looks like a second conditional, because this is fake past or subjunctive form. Tom would have survived. It means Tom died in the past. But we are saying that she is not a good doctor. She is a bad doctor and Tom died. You see, part of it belongs to the present situation and part of it belongs to the past situation. Let's talk about a condition word. Instead of if, we could use unless. But unless makes things the opposite. Look, unless means if not. I won't talk unless you apologize. Let's say you want to remove unless and add if. You need to, one of the sentences negative if it is positive, or you need to make it positive if it is negative. Look, remove unless, use if. I won't talk, you keep it the same. If you, instead of you apologize, if you don't apologize. This is something that you need to be careful about. Let's talk about should in conditionals. In advanced conditionals, you see a lot of uses of should in this structure. When you use should in a conditional, it lowers the probability of the condition. What does that mean? If you should see Alice, it means I know it may not be very highly probable that you see Alice, but I'm still saying this to you. If you should see Alice, tell her I am waiting. Again, we have the comma in here, and this is a first conditional. And because it says if you see Alice, but you know that person is not going to see Alice. It's not likely, at least. You say if you should see Alice. And you know what? We could still bring down the probability. We could use should happen to instead of should. If you should happen to see Alice, tell her I'm waiting. You see how unlikely it is for this person to see Alice. Okay. Again, should. Invert conditional to sound more formal. Inversion is one of our future lessons. We'll talk about it in detail. But in here, just have this. Look, example. If you should have any inquiries, again, this is formal when you're talking to, like, for example, you're the phone operator, you're talking to a user or a client. This is like you say, if you have any inquiries, you say, if you should have any inquiries. It sounds more formal, and you are saying that, for example, we are doing our job very well, and I know that it is very unlikely for you to have any inquiries. Please don't hesitate to call us. Now, we want to even make it more formal. We bring should to the beginning of the sentence. This is as simple as that. We are using should instead of if. Okay, so should is like your condition word. Should you have, you see, if you should have, or if you have, becomes should you have any inquiries, please don't hesitate to call us. This sounds more formal and it sounds actually nicer. but for is another thing we use in advanced conditionals. Whenever you see but for in a sentence, that is a conditional sentence. Look at this one. But for plus noun or a noun phrase. If the ranger hadn't helped, this looks like a third conditional, right? We'd be lost in the woods. This is a mixed conditional, of course. It means still we would be lost in the woods. So, now, we want to use but for. Look, this is a little bit strange, like for conditionals. Because after but for, you use a noun or a noun phrase. When you say, but for the ranger's help, it means if the ranger hadn't helped us. But for your lessons, if I hadn't seen your lessons. But for their contribution, it means if they hadn't contributed to us, we'd be lost in the woods. Now, the second conditional has another form. All right, look, we use were to. This is more formal. Example, if I asked you to marry me, second conditional, would you say yes? All right, we could say this in a different form. We could say, if I were to, always were to. If I were to ask, the base form this time, not asked. If I were to ask you to marry me, it is still second conditional. Would you say yes? You say, for example, if she were to travel with you, would you go with her? Something. You could turn every second conditional into this form, and it sounds more formal. Now, polite conditionals. Look, we know that we don't use will or would in the condition or in the if clause. But in here, we do so. Why? Because we want to sound more polite and friendly. Look, we say, use will or would in condition. If you will wait here, the doctor will see you in a moment. Let's say this is a doctor's office, and the secretary or the assistant or whoever the hell there is for you, they don't say, if you wait here, the doctor will see you. It's not very nice. You say, if you will wait here, or if you would wait here, the doctor will see you in no time. It sounds friendlier, nicer, and more polite. Now, there is another use of will. If you use it in the condition, it is not always about being polite. Sometimes it is about the emphasis. Look at this one. If you will keep smoking, you could say if you keep smoking. If you will keep smoking, you're saying that I know you, the person I'm talking to, my audience, you are insisting on keeping smoking. So that's why I say if you will keep smoking. This is for emphasis. This is not for being polite in this case. If you will keep smoking, you're going to ruin your skin and damage your heart. Okay, this was our lesson. Do the attached exercises and ask me your questions in Q&A section. See you next time. Welcome to lesson 8. We are talking about subjunctives today. Look, I'll explain what subjunctive is, but it's specifically we are talking about it's time, it's high time. You must have heard them. I wish I did that, I wish you hadn't done that. I'd rather, to express preferences, as if, as though, and formal subjunctives. Let's begin. Look, what is subjunctive? We have three main moods for English verbs. Okay, so we have the indicative mood. Most sentences, like 99% of the sentences you use on a daily basis, they are in indicative mood. Indicative mood is about real things, like the sentence, like almost every sentence I'm using, they are all in indicative mood because they are all real in my mind. We have the subjunctive mood, like I hope you will succeed. The I hope part is the indicative part. You will succeed is the subjunctive part because that hasn't happened yet. No one can predict the future. You see what I mean? So that is what we mean by subjunctive or something unreal. I will expand on that with more examples. And then the third mood is the imperative mood. You know what imperative mood is, like do this, don't do that. These are imperative moods. We use it to give command or orders. Now, subjunctive mood. A verb form to express unreal things like hopes, dreams, demands. We say, I demand he do that. We don't say, I demand he does that. That because it is in subjunctive mood. We say, I demand she do that. So that is the explanation of that. Suggestions, when you suggest something to somebody, that is not a real thing because, they may take up on your suggestion or not. Look, and look, when we say subjunctive mood is not one form. It depends on the situation. So it is a mood. It is not one form. It comes in different forms. I wish I were rich. Remember we talked about using were and not was in conditionals? Why was that? Because a conditional is a subjunctive. The verb is in subjunctive mood. I wish I were rich. Of course, I'm not rich. I will explain wish later on. So I'm just explaining what subjunctive is and why we call it unreal. Were in here is in subjunctive mood. I hope you will succeed. You will succeed is a prediction. Okay, but when you say, I hope you will succeed, it is subjunctive. It is in the future. But in here, we use will. But you need to know that the verb is not in indicative mood. It is not a future simple form. It is a subjunctive mood, all right? Because it is uncertain. The future is always uncertain. He could have called me. He didn't. This is like a partly conditional, third conditional. He could have called me. You see, I gave you 3 different forms for subjunctive mood, just to emphasize that subjunctive mood is not one form. It comes in different forms. Let's talk about its time. You must have heard it. A lot of people use it on a daily basis. When something is getting late, or you think that, I should have done it by now. For example, you're at the party. You wanted to leave at 10 o'clock. Now it is 10:15. You use this. You say, yeah, it is already late for me leaving. Followed by past simple or continuous. Look, it's time we fixed the system. It means the system has been broken for a while, and it is about time. Sometimes we say it's time, it's high time, it's about time. But remember, we don't say it's about time we do that. We say it's about time we did that. It is another subjunctive mood. It's about time we were leaving. Again, you could use past simple or past continuous. It means you're still sitting there, but you know that you should have left a while ago. And you say, it's high time or it's about time we were leaving. It's about time we left. It's about time we were in bed. It's high time you got a haircut. You don't say yeah, you could say it's time for you to get a haircut. But when you say it's high time, when you immediately bring the subject, it's high time you got a haircut. You could say it's time for you to get a haircut. That's a different structure. In here, it's high time you got a haircut. Okay, now I wish. I wish for the present situations. I wish for the present is different from I wish for the past. I'll explain I wish for the past in a future slide. Look, I wish for the present. You're expressing a wish. Wish, past simple or continuous. Again, it is in subjunctive mood. You say, I wish I had more power. It means you don't have enough power. She wishes. This is the indicative form. Look, I wish, she wishes, we wish. This is the indicative mood. The first part. The second part is in subjunctive mood. Her father weren't leaving. That's why we don't say her father wasn't leaving. We say her father weren't leaving because it is in subjunctive mood. We wish, the indicative part. We wish COVID restrictions came. We're talking about the present situation. Okay, but we call it fake past. But a better term instead of fake past in here is the subjunctive mood. We wish COVID restrictions came to an end soon. We don't say we wish they come to an end soon. That is grammatically wrong. Now, sometimes we use I wish to complain about something. We are still not talking about I wish for the past. This is still I wish for the present. We say wish, would, with a complaining tone. Example, I wish you would stop lying to me. You could say I wish you stopped, past simple. I wish you stopped lying to me. But that has a neutral tone. If you want to make it sound complaining, you say I wish you would stop lying to me. It means you're frustrated by that person's lying. But remember, if your subject in here, in here you use I, in here we use you. It's a different person outside of the speaker. But you could not use would for I and we because that sounds ridiculous. Let me explain. We say, I wish I could wake up earlier in the morning. It means you are, this is in subjunctive mood. I wish I could wake up early in the morning. You are complaining about a bad habit of yours. Why can't you say, I wish I would wake up? It's funny. It's who is stopping you? You see, you need to mention your lack of capability or ability to wake up early in the morning. That's why we don't use I wish I would. You could use it in a joke, but not in reality. I wish I could wake up earlier in the morning. Now, I wish in the past. Sometimes you use this, mostly actually, we use this to express regret about a past event. Instead of past simple or past continuous, we use past perfect. I wish I hadn't eaten that last donut. It means you ate that last donut, now you are regretting it. This is again in subjunctive mood. I wish, when you use I wish, it is always the following clauses are in subjunctive mood. I wish I had seen you earlier. It means, I saw you a bit late. Something like that. Now, hope. After hope, we use will or present. Both are accepted. We say, I hope you will find peace, subjunctive. I hope she calls me again, present simple. Both of them are in subjunctive mood. You need to know that. But either of these forms, will or present, would be accepted. Now, we use I'd rather to talk about our preferences. Sometimes we use about our preferences in the present, sometimes about our preferences in the past. First, we want to discuss I'd rather to express a preference in the present. We use we have two different forms in here, okay? It depends on you using the subject after I'd rather or not. Okay, look, I'd rather plus subject plus past simple or continuous. Look, I'd rather you, look, this is very important. If you use the subject after I'd rather, the structure will be different. I'd rather you didn't call me anymore, past simple. And remember, this is about a present situation. This is fake past. I'd rather you didn't call me anymore. It means I don't want you to call me anymore right now, at this moment. Now, you could use a different form for the same meaning. You don't have to use the subject. You could bring the verb immediately after I'd rather. In this case, it is not past anymore. It is in base form. I'd rather leave the party now. And when you don't use the subject, it means it is still the same subject, I. So you could say the very same sentence. You could say, I'd rather I left the party now. Because you brought the subject. You could repeat the subject, even if the subject is still the same. But you have the option not to. I'd rather leave, base form, the party now. So these two structures are used for the same purpose, but you need to be careful if you bring the subject after I'd rather, or you eliminate the subject. Now, I'd rather, talking about a preference in the past. Again, two different structures, but the same meaning. Very similar to the previous slide. I'd rather for present purposes. I'd rather plus subject plus past perfect this time. Okay? I'd rather you had called me sooner. It means you didn't call me soon enough. I'd rather you, subject, had called me sooner. Now, very similar to the previous slide. If you don't use a subject, I'd rather plus have plus past participle. Look, I'd rather have bought a new car. I'd rather, because you see, you don't see a subject in here. So what do you use? You use past infinitive, or we call it bare past infinitive. It means you don't have a to. You don't say to have bought. You just have bought. I'd rather have bought a newer car. Now, let's use a subject. We could say, I'd rather I had bought a newer car. You see the difference? But both of them are accepted. It depends on the situation, and it depends if you want to repeat the subject, or you don't need to repeat the subject, or you have a new subject, or you are expressing your preference about a different person, you're expressing your preference about your own self. It depends. Now, as if, as though. You use as if and as though, which mean very similar to each other. When you want to say something is like something else. Okay. Listen. In two different situations, we use as if or as though. Even native speakers in here make mistakes. So you got to be listening to me carefully. Look, if it is a real or an indicative situation, it means it is in indicative mood, we keep the tense. What does that mean, keep the tense? Look at the example. We say, she looked, past simple, as if she were in charge. Look, if the tense before as if is the same as the tense after as if or as though, it means it's a real situation. When you say, she looked as if she were in charge, it means she was actually in charge. It means you're assuming that she's in charge. She behaves, present simple, as though everything is, present simple, fine. Okay, so before as though and after as though, the tense is the same. It means it's a real situation. It means you're assuming everything is actually fine. All right? That's why we call it as if for real or indicative situations. Now look at this one. As if or as though for unreal or subjunctive mood. Push the tense back. He looked, past simple, as if he had seen a ghost. Past simple, past perfect. It means it is subjunctive. There was no ghost, obviously. He behaves, present simple, as though everything were fine. Because it is subjunctive, we don't use was. As though everything were fine. And you see the difference. This is present simple, this is past simple. So this must be subjunctive or unreal. It means everything was not fine. Okay? Even native speakers are not careful with this distinction. So if you are, that's a big deal. All right, that was our lesson. Do the exercises attached to the lecture and ask me any questions in Q&A section. See you next time. Welcome to lesson 9. In this lesson, we are talking about modal verbs, but only in present and future references. In our next lesson, we'll talk about modal verbs for past references. Okay, so modal verbs, present and future references. These are the modal verbs we're going to cover today. Must, should, can, could, may, might, shall, will, would, need, dare, and had better. Had better, yeah, may not be a modal verb, but it works like a modal verb. Let's begin. There are some general rules about modal verbs you shouldn't ever forget. Look, they are always auxiliary verbs. What does that mean? It means you don't say I can it. You say I can do it. I will see you. There is always a main verb. So the auxiliary verb, the modal verb, always works as an auxiliary verb. They have one form only. I'm pretty sure that you have heard they say could is the past form of can. That's bullshit. Could is not the past form of can. Could and can are two independent modal verbs we use for different purposes. Yes, we use can for ability in the present and could for ability in the past. But it doesn't mean that could is the past form of can. Every single modal verb is unique in its form. And you cannot say, for example, you cannot say I can, you can, she cans. That's the distinctive feature of a modal verb. Only one form. They are always followed by the base form. We don't say I will seeing, he can, to do it. Always, no exception. When you have a modal verb, the following verb comes in the base form. Have, do, see, go, watch, and so on. They are used to express functions. Remember, we said they are always auxiliary verb. So what the hell is the difference between like auxiliary verbs like do, does, did, was, were, have, had, has, and so on, and modal verbs? The difference is we use the other auxiliary verbs to create the tense. We use modal verbs to create functions. I will explain. Let's start with must. Must could have three main uses or functions. We use must to express obligation. All passengers must fasten the seatbelt. This is the obligation. It means they are obliged to do that. Like it's the law or it's the rule. Another use of must is deduction. Deduction, it means, for example, deduction is some form of reasoning. You make an observation, you make a decision, or for example, you conclude something based on that observation. We call it deduction. But remember, only positive. It means must, we cannot use mustn't or must not in deduction. Only must, the positive form. We say, he is holding the knife, he must be the killer. You see a person holding the knife. You didn't see them. You didn't see that person killing anybody else. But by witnessing, by observing that person holding a knife, you conclude or you deduce that that person must be the killer. We call it deduction. A strong advice. You say, you must watch this film. It's amazing. You use this in more casual or friendly context when you're talking to your friends. And this is really an amazing film. I recommend you watch it. Now, what is the difference between must and have to? Both of them mean obligation. We use both of them to create the function of obligation, all right? But what is the difference? There is a teeny tiny difference between must and have to in positive form. Look, when you use must, the obligation comes from the speaker. Example, when you say, I must exercise every other day, it means it is my own decision. I must finish this job today. It is my own decision. I want to do this. All right? So you're saying this. But when you use have to, it means the obligation is coming from outside. You say, I have to finish this report by tonight. You don't need to explain. You are saying that someone else assigned this job to me and someone else is asking me, is pushing me, is obliging me, is forcing me to finish this job by tonight. So instead of using must, we use I have to. But again, the difference is very little, all right? So if you use them interchangeably, that is not the end of the world. But if you use mustn't and don't have to interchangeably, that could be the end of the world, all right? There is a big difference between them. We use mustn't for prohibition. When you say something is forbidden, we say, you mustn't smoke in here. You're reminding somebody of a law or a rule. It's forbidden. But don't have to has a completely different meaning. Don't have to means a lack of obligation. It means it's up to you. Your choice. When you say, you don't have to dress up for the supermarket. Actually, in some countries I've been to, people dress up to go to the supermarket. They don't have to do that. It's their choice. So yeah, that's the difference between mustn't, forbidding something, and don't have to, saying your choice. Now, should. we have we have a lot of uses and functions for should and other modal verbs. We are just discussing the most common ones. We use should for expectation, to express something that we expect. You say, the dinner should be ready soon. It means I expect the dinner to be ready soon. So we use should. For advice, this might be the most common use of should. You shouldn't be so cruel to him. You are giving a piece of advice to somebody. Should or shouldn't. Express surprise for an odd coincidence. This is an advanced and unique use of should. It's incredible that we should meet again here after so many years. Let's say, for example, you meet a friend after 20 years in a completely different country, like in a remote area. That's really surprising. That's really odd. You know, say that, yeah, you could say that it's a surprise that we are meeting in here, but you could make it even more beautiful by using should. You could say, it's really odd that we should meet here after so many years. It's like gives this literary transcendent tone to your sentence. Could. Look, it is common practice, or for example, it is the conception that we use could for the past, but no, we do use could for the past. We'll talk about it in our next lesson, but could be used for the present, just like the sentence I just said, could be used for the present, because we are talking about possibility in here. We're not talking about ability. When you say, she could be thinking about you right now, it means that's a possibility. We are talking about the present situation. We use could for suggestion, like this. We could see a film tonight for a change, like you want to make a suggestion. You don't say, let's see a film. You don't say, we should see a film. You say, we could see a film tonight, just to present somebody with a choice or a suggestion. I have already explained deduction, what deduction is. But remember, with must, we only use the positive form of must for deduction. This is the opposite. Only the negative form of could, meaning couldn't, could be used in deductions. Couldn't means impossibility of a situation. When you say, you couldn't possibly expect me to believe that you were just talking, all right? It means it's impossible for me. And you're bringing possibly in here for emphasis. When you say you couldn't expect me, it means it's impossible. My deduction is that, like, it's impossible, based on the observation you can see in the picture, obviously. Okay, can. We use can to talk about capabilities. We say some people can sometimes be really stupid. It means that is the capability of people. Ability, probably the most common use of can. She can swim like a shark. It means she has the ability to swim like a shark. Again, deduction, just like couldn't. Look, can't and couldn't are very similar to each other in deduction. They both mean impossibility of a situation. When you say, you can't be serious, it means you must be joking. You see? The same. You must be joking, positive deduction. You can't be serious, negative deduction, meaning the same. Now, may and might. May and might are very similar to each other. They are basically the same thing, but only in some contexts. Like, for example, we'll talk about it. In reported speech, they are different. But in this context, they are practically the same. Especially if they are positive, may, might, and could mean the same when you're talking about possibility. Okay. To express uncertainty, you say, we may or we might not be the most intelligent species after all. But you can, look, because this is negative, in here you cannot use could. Because if you use could, you are talking about impossibility, not uncertainty. That is the difference between may, might, and could. Yeah, may, might, could. If they are positive, they could be used interchangeably in this context. If they are negative, may not and might not are similar. Could not is completely different. We use them to make a request. We say, may I ask you, or might I ask you to lift your foot off my toe? This happens a lot, like on trams, on trains. And you could say, could I ask you, because it is positive. Permission. You may or you might park your car here. Again, you could use you could because it is positive. Shall. Look, we could talk about shall for 2-3 hours, all right? But in here, we are talking about the most common uses of shall. Shall is not commonly used in like spoken English or in casual contexts. So you should be careful. It's mostly common in historical texts or in legal documents. Mostly, not always. If your subject is I or we, it means will. Okay, so shall means will if your subject is I and we. But remember, it is very formal. Don't use it like in daily spoken English. It's funny. You could use it as a joke, but seriously, no. We say the truth shall prevail. Yeah, you could use it like this. The truth shall prevail. But do you get the tone in here? It's very formal. Like, for example, a politician could use this in their speech or something like that, but not in the conversation, the normal conversations they have among themselves. Shall could express obligation, especially in legal documents. If you open a legal document, you see a lot of shalls. But shall is actually referring to a third person, singular or plural. We say all employees shall abide by the company's code of conduct. Like it is an obligation to them. Dare. All right? Dare could be a normal verb or it could be a modal verb. Dare as a normal verb. Okay? To be brave enough for something. They are very similar to each other. The meanings are not that different, but the use, if you use it as a modal verb or you use it as a normal verb, the use of it in the sentence will be different. The meaning is to be brave enough for something. We say, I didn't dare to go any closer. You see, after dare, we use an infinitive, to go, because it is a normal verb. It is not a modal verb in here. Another use of dare as a normal verb is to challenge someone into doing something. We say, I dare you to say that again to my face. I dare you to say. How could you tell if you see dare in a sentence or in a book? You want to say, okay, is this a normal verb or a modal verb? Look at the form of the following main verb. If it is in infinitive, it is a normal verb. If it is in base form, it is a modal verb. Now, dare as a modal verb, mainly in questions and negatives. So mainly in questions and negatives. We say, he dare not refuse my offer. You see, we brought immediately not after dare, just like a modal verb. We say will not, must not, dare not. And look at the form of the main verb, refuse, the base form. This is definitely a modal verb. He dare not refuse my offer. And again, a question. This is a negative form, this is a question form. How dare you ask? How could you tell this is modal? Ask is in base form. How dare you ask me that question? All right, this was our lesson. Do the exercises attached to the lecture and ask me any questions in Q&A section. See you next time. Welcome to lesson 10. We are talking about past references of modal verbs today. So, had to, should have, could have, may have, might have, must have, can't have, would not, and needn't have are the modal verbs we'll discuss today. Let's start with had to. Had, we could use it as a substitute for must and have to. In the past, you cannot use must, all right, for obligation. So we use had to. You remember I told you about the teeny tiny difference between must and have to in present references? Well, that goes away, like when you're talking about in the past. Both of them become had to. She had to answer all the questions correctly. It means it was her obligation. You didn't have to be there so early. In the negative form, you didn't have to. It is still a lack of obligation. Remember that. It's just like don't have to. You didn't have to. I have had to put up with this guy for 70 years. All right, look, this is the present perfect form, but it is, you call it present perfect, but it is about something in the past. So yes, this is also for obligation in present perfect form. Now, should have. Should have has three main functions. First, we use it for unfulfilled expectations. Remember, we talked about should that expresses expectation. Should have could express unfulfilled expectation. Example, he should have arrived by now. Something is wrong. You're waiting for somebody. They haven't arrived. They were supposed to arrive like an hour ago, but they haven't arrived yet. You say, they should have arrived by now. Something is wrong. It means I had that expectation, but now my expectation is not fulfilled. Criticism of past actions. You shouldn't have told him my story. Look, all of them, they basically mean the same. We are just distinguishing between the partly different meanings between these uses or functions. You shouldn't have told him my story. This is criticizing. It means it wasn't a good idea for you to tell him my story. Regret. Very similar. I should have tried harder. Okay? And remember, should is a modal verb. Have, the following verb, in base form. Remember, I told you. This is tried in past participle, but it is not like under the influence of the modal verb. It is subject to this. That's why it is not in base form, because base form, it is following have. This auxiliary verb in here changes the following verb into the past participle form. Now, could for past references. We use it for past ability. We say, she could speak 5 languages when she was 8. She had the ability. Very simple. Permission in the past. We say, we could stay up late to watch football when we were kids. It means we were allowed to do that. Now, could have. Could is for ability in the past. Possibility in the present. Could have is for possibility in the past. We say things could have been worse. It means it would be possible for the things to be worse. All right? We are talking about a possibility in a past situation. Or we could have found a better hotel. Like, it would be possible. This is a very shitty hotel. Like, we could have found a better one. Must have. Remember, I told you about must, the positive form of must for deduction. We use must have for the same purpose, deduction, in the past, positive only. We say, he must have killed her. He had the motive. We are talking about a past event. It means your observation is that he had the motive, so he must have killed her. It means I'm sure he killed her. She looks very happy. Observation. Now, what is the deduction? She must have got the job. It means I'm sure that she got the job. That's why she's smiling. She looks very happy. Can't have. Past deduction, only negative form. Can't have, it means impossibility. All right? Must have, it means I'm sure. He can't have killed her. It means I think it's impossible that he killed her. He loved her so dearly. That's why I think it was impossible for him to kill her. Look, in this context, can't have and couldn't have almost mean the same. All right? So you could use them interchangeably. We say he couldn't have possibly confessed to the murder. You could simply say he can't have possibly confessed to the murder. They mean the same in this context. Deduction, negative. When you are saying that, I'm sure something is not the case. Would not. We use would not in past references to talk about unwillingness of somebody to do something. Example, we say, he just wouldn't shut up. You're telling a story and, you're talking about a very talkative person, talking incessantly about, everything. And you are saying that he was unwilling to stop talking. You say, he would not stop talking. Or another example, we say, no matter how many times I called, she wouldn't answer. It means she was unwilling to answer the phone. We are talking about the past. Needn't have. You know that need could be an auxiliary verb, just like dare, or a modal verb. All right? A lack of obligation in the past. Look, I'm going to explain the difference between didn't need to and needn't have. These are different from each other. Look, when you use need as a modal verb, you see, needn't have paid. Need in here is a modal verb. We needn't have paid for the toilet. If you said this, it means you did pay for the toilet. Now you're saying that we needn't have paid for the toilet. But if you say we didn't need to pay, it means you didn't pay. You see, they are very similar to each other. Okay? But again, why are we studying grammar? Because we want to be as clear as possible. We don't want to explain a sentence we say. Every sentence you use should be self-explanatory. All right? That is the point of good language. That's why we say, if you did pay, use needn't have paid. If you didn't pay, use didn't need to pay. You see the infinitive in here? It shows, and also this auxiliary verb in here, it means this need is a normal verb. It is not a modal verb. But this one is a modal verb. And that's it. Do the exercises attached to this lecture and ask me any questions you have in Q&A. See you next time. Welcome to lesson 11. In this lesson, we are talking about inversion. Now, what is inversion? Actually, you know, this guy, you must know him. He is Master Yoda. He is called a master because he was a master of inversion. This is one of the examples. The greatest teacher, failure is. This, you know, inversion looks like this. I'll explain to you. Look, we have two different types of inversion. The first type of inversion is we use question form when we are not asking a question. All right? Look, not only did she report the accident. Look, I'm going to explain to you why this is inverted in our future slides. This is just an example. I'm explaining to you what inversion is. Look, not only did she report the accident, but also told them who the driver was. Look, you see, instead of saying not only she did report the accident or she reported the accident, we say it like a question, but it is not a question. This is one form of inversion. And look, another example. Never have I seen such an idiot. Like you could say, I have never seen such an idiot. Never have I seen. You see, it looks like a question. The syntax is a question syntax, but it is not a question. It is inversion. Another type of inversion is when we invert the subject and verb order. It means we just switch their places. Example, along the street walked a strange man. We say a strange man, like in a normal way. A strange man walked along the street. But we switch the places of the subject and the verb. This is another form of inversion. We're going to cover them with examples in this lesson. Look, why inversion? Why do we invert? Okay, that is the first question, the philosophical background of inversion. Mostly it is for rhetorical effect. What is rhetorical effect? It means, you know, it sounds more beautiful. It is as simple as that. That is why it's very common in political speeches and in formal texts, because it is more impactful, it is more influential. It affects the people who are listening to you or the people who are reading your text. Look, the normal way we could say, we had never seen such a disaster. That is like a normal past perfect sentence. Now, the inverted form, never, we started with, because you know, that is the rhetorical effect. You want to begin your sentence with something catchy, like never. Then you cannot say never we had seen. You should say never had we seen such a disaster. Again, this is just an example. Let's get to the, where we use inversion. When you start your sentence with one of these adverbs, seldom, rarely, or never. Look, seldom could she be seen without him. Again, this is for rhetorical effect. You could say that like in non-inverted version. You could say that, for example, she could seldom be seen without him. But you want to begin your sentence with seldom. That is your emphasis. We'll talk about emphasis a little bit more in our next lesson. Rarely do I go out for lunch. Now, we also use inversion. We say adverbials because we call all of them adverbials. An adverbial is an adverb or an adverbial phrase. It is an adverb, simply put. When you start your sentence with little do we know about the risks of AI, which is artificial intelligence. You could say we know little about the risks of AI, but this is, again, you start your sentence with little, you have to invert it. If you don't invert it, that's wrong. Little did they respect people's privacy. This is not a question. This is a statement, but inverted statement. Okay, now, when you start your sentence with only then, only if, and only later, we invert. Look, only after seeing her, you see, so these are combinations of only. You need to keep an eye on this only at the beginning of your sentence. Only after seeing her did I remember we had been roommates. You cannot say only after seeing her I remembered. That is grammatically wrong. Okay, no. Now, when you have only at the beginning of the sentence, don't rush into inversion. You need to pay attention to what comes after only. If only is followed by a subject, you don't invert. All right? Look, in here, only after seeing her, not a subject. But in here, only the driver knows how this happened, in this photo in here. So when you have the subject in here, there is no inversion. So pay attention to this one. The other adverbials we invert after which are these. Look, the key word is no and not. Under no circumstances. Remember, if you begin your sentence with this one, you need to invert, not just like if you put them in your sentences anywhere. Under no circumstances are you allowed to come in, for example. On no account is she to be trusted. At no time, in no way, on no condition, not until, not only. All right, examples. Under no circumstances is he allowed to leave. Not until I opened the door did I find out. Look, there is something tricky in this example. You see, not until I opened the door. You see, there is a clause immediately after not until. This is not inverted. All right, don't confuse this clause with this clause, which must be inverted, and this clause, which shouldn't be inverted. Not until I opened the door, normal, did I find out. Okay, the other forms of inversion. When you start your sentence with so or such, and then follow it with that at some point. We say, so brutal. I'll explain to you why this is green. So brutal was the government, not the government was. So brutal was the government that, you see, these two work in tandem. It means they work together. So brutal was the government that 1,500 people were killed in only 7 days. This really happened in Iran in 2019. The government really killed at least 1,500 people in the streets because they were protesting. So, look, such, another example, such was the wind. We don't say such the wind was. Such was the wind that we could barely stand. You explain the cause of something or the severity of something. Look, why did I make this green? Because after so, we use an adjective. We say, so brutal was he. So cruel was I. So you need to follow it with an adjective. But such is different. Okay, inversion in conditionals. This is a very interesting one. Because whenever you listen to somebody who is giving a formal speech, they don't use normal conditionals. They use inverted conditionals. Now, listen to this. You will remember. When you have a third conditional, if you want to make it more formal or sometimes less likely, the condition is less likely. You use this inverted form. This is normal. Okay, this is normal third conditional. If I had known about your coming, I would have arranged everything. All right, this is normal third conditional. Now, how could we invert it for rhetorical effect and also for showing that the condition was less likely in the speaker's opinion? Look, it's very simple. Had I known, you bring this had at the beginning of the sentence and you drop if. Very simple. Had I known about your coming, I would have arranged everything. Now, inversion after as. Formal and written language. Again, in formal and written language. Like, you could say that in a daily, conversation, but it is not very normal. It depends who are you speaking with. If it's a friend, it sounds a bit funny. I thought, as did everybody. Okay, it means everybody thought just like I did. I thought as did everybody, not as everybody did. I thought, as did everybody, that COVID would come to an end by 2022. That was just an illusion. We're still in the middle of it. We are very worried about global warming, comma. Don't forget about this comma, because we are commenting on our statement in here. We are very worried about global warming, comma, as should everybody be. We don't say as everybody should be. We say as should everybody be. Just like the form of a question. Now, so, neither, and nor. Neither or neither, it depends on the pronunciation. Look, there is a distinction. I'll explain to you. The first person, the person A, says, I am going home. The person B agrees, so am I. The sentence with so am I. All right? Now look, again, person A says, I don't like parties. So is for positive sentences, and neither, when you begin your sentence, is for negative sentences. I don't like parties. You're agreeing with that person. Person B says, neither do I. Now look at this one. I don't like lazy people. And the same person, you're continuing speaking. I don't like lazy people, comma, nor do I, inversion, nor do I appreciate people who are always negative. Look, all this is said by the same person. So be careful when you use so, neither, and nor when you are inverting your sentence. That's it. Do the exercises, the attached exercises to this lecture, and ask me any questions you have. See you in next lesson. Welcome to lesson 12. In this lesson, we are talking about emphasis. Okay, now what is emphasis? You know the meaning of emphasis when you want to emphasize a part of speech in your sentence for rhetorical effect, for whatever effect you are after. Let me give you an example. Look, this is like the most basic form of emphasis. Look, we have a simple, draw attention to a part of speech. Look, you could say, I wake up every day at 7 a.m. It means not anyone else. Or you could say, I wake up every day at 7 a.m. It means I don't eat breakfast. I wake up every day at 7 a.m. You want to emphasize the frequency. I wake up every day at 7 a.m., not 8 a.m. I wake up every day at 7 a.m., not 7 p.m. You see, so this is the most basic, the simplest form of emphasis. This is what we mean by emphasis. Now, we have other more sophisticated, more advanced ways to show emphasis in the speech. Listen, our lesson today is about that. Emphasis with passive. Look, it's all about the subject. What does that mean? When you're talking about something or someone, that thing or that person is the subject of your speech or subject of whatever, a subject of the discussion. So, you see, subject is something you begin your sentence with. So we tend to begin every single sentence with the subject of the speech, right? Look, you could say, a dentist fixed my teeth. This is not, you're not emphasizing the dentist. Who the hell is the dentist? My teeth were fixed by a dentist. Again, your teeth don't have personality. You don't want to begin your sentence with my teeth. Like, they are not that important. You are important. So you begin your sentence with I. But how do we do that? We have already talked about it in our lesson on passive. Passive with have or get. So we say, I had my teeth fixed by a dentist. If you don't remember this, go back to our passive lesson part 2. We talked about it. Look, so see, This is one of the greatest functions of passive with have, because you can choose which subject to use in your sentence. Now, emphasis with inversion. Remember inversion? Our previous lesson. Change the order of subject and verb. We say, in no way you are refusing something, you're declining something. In no way was she like her father. We don't say she was like her father, because you bring in no way at the beginning of the sentence, you invert. Only after you will I go in. Why do we call it emphasis? Because, we are putting pressure on the beginning of the sentence. Only after you will I go in. Will I, not I will. Up in the air were my legs. Like, for example, I had an accident, or, for example, I fell off the bike, and up in the air were my legs. Emphasis. Suddenly, up went the prices. Suddenly, up went the prices. So, remember, we don't have a comma in here. If you use a comma in here, you don't have to invert. So, emphasis with fronting. Fronting, it means whatever you want to put emphasis on, you bring it to the front of the sentence. That is why we call it fronting, like Master Yoda again. You could say, I don't know where she is. But you bring this in here, you say, where she is, I don't know. It is not a question. You just, it's a statement. You want to put emphasis on the fact that you have no idea where she is. It may be difficult, comma, but not impossible. This is the normal way. This is not the inverted way. This is the inverted way. Difficult, it may be. Difficult, it may be, but not impossible. Remember, we're not talking about inversion. We're talking about emphasis and fronting. All right. Cleft sentences. A cleft sentence is comprised of two clauses. Sentence begins with it is, it was, or a what clause. What does that mean? We say, it is Elisa who wants a divorce. We say, for example, you could say Elisa wants a divorce, but you want to put emphasis on the fact that it is her, not me, or not the husband, or not the wife, or whatever. It is Elisa who wants a divorce. It was Tesla who invented electricity. Yeah, a lot of people think Edison invented electricity, but that is not true. Nikola Tesla invented electricity, alternate current. Now, what clause for emphasis? What I want from you is loyalty. You could say, I want loyalty from you. It's a very simple sentence with no emphasis, but you could say, what I want from you is loyalty. What she did was to, is optional, slap him in the face. Now, emphasis words. We use some words to create emphasis. It is not always about inverting or fronting or whatever else we talked about today. Sometimes you add a word to your sentence for more emphatic effect. Look, we say, one of the words is own. It was my own idea. You need to raise your voice or the tonality. The sentence stress is important in here. You don't say it was my idea, it was my own idea. That's why you go up when you say own. Indeed, this situation is terrible indeed. You go up. Very. This very is not very beautiful or very expensive. It is a different very. She arrived at the very same moment. You want to emphasize it was exactly on the dot, on the second, on the fraction of the second. Like you say, I am the very same person who taught you passives. You say, I saw the Robert De Niro yesterday. Yeah, we know that. We don't use definite articles before people's names, but you want to say, look, it wasn't a different Robert De Niro. It was the Robert De Niro from the movies. Look, and self. You say, I did it all. You could say by myself, or I did it all myself. Again, you go up. Emphasis in negatives. In negatives, it means when you are refusing something, when you are denying something. You say, it wasn't difficult at all. At all is an adverbial you use to create emphasis. It wasn't, you could say it wasn't difficult, but emphasis, it wasn't difficult at all. You could say I wasn't scared, but you want to emphasize. You say I wasn't the least bit scared. I underline this because it's an adjective. You use an adjective after this. Or an adverb. It depends on the situation. It wasn't pleasant in the slightest. Again, you go up. Pleasant in the slightest. Again, an adjective or an adverb with the in the slightest. There are no people in the streets whatsoever or whatever. Yeah, this is a street from the COVID era. Okay. Emphasis with ever. Look, you say whoever, however, whenever, whatever. These are all could be used to create emphasis in your sentence. You could say, who told you about me? Or you could emphasize. You could say, whoever told you about me. You're angry, you're raising your voice, or for example, you're pissed in some way. However, this is different from that. However, to create contrast. That is a different however. However, in here it means how. Like we say, how did you find out about him? But you want to say, however did you find out about him? Whenever. You could say, when are we going home? Or you could put emphasis. Whenever are we going home? It means you really want to go home and you're really frustrated. You could say, what you're doing, stop it now. You could say, whatever you're doing, stop it now. Emphasis with do. This is a very simple one. You know, you may use it all the time. You hear it all the time, I bet. You could say, so, she did tell you about me. Remember, you could say she told you about me, but when you use did, you need to use the base form, obviously. So she did tell you about me. Or you want to be polite. You say, please sit down. You could say, please do sit down. It sounds more polite and also emphatic. I do like comedies. You say, this person doesn't like comedies. You say, no, I do like comedies. Emphasis. She does want to help you. Again, you go up. When we say emphasis, you know, we don't even need to mention it. The tonality is very important. Adjectives and adverbs. There is a number of adjectives and adverbs we use to create emphasis. Look at these examples. Actually. She actually trusted him. Again, don't forget the raising the voice. Not raising the voice, like going up in your tone. Don't raise your voice. It is by no means certain when the restrictions will be lifted. It was sheer, you say, this is a common combination, sheer luck. It was sheer luck that we didn't die. When you use sheer, it means like, for example, it wasn't anything else. It was just luck. We were so fucking lucky that we survived that accident, whatever that was. Look, utter. What he says is utter nonsense. You want to say there is nothing that makes absolutely any sense in whatever he is saying. Like Donald Trump. Look, she was simply wonderful. Simply. She was simply wonderful. The salt was just the right amount. You are giving compliment to the chef or the cook. Say, the salt was just the right amount. Echoing phrases. Echoing phrases. When someone asks you a question, you echo back. How do you do that? We use so and alright. Look, person A says, is this the man who attacked you? You don't want to say just, yes, he is. You're angry. You say, so he is. You see, like widening the eyes and raising tone. So he is. So she is. And all right. This is like, has a very nifty comic impact. Some person A says something is missing. Person B wants to agree. Says something is missing, all right? Okay, it means you're agreeing with them. Other forms of emphasis. Day after day, love turns gray like the skin of a dying man. Night after night, we pretend it's all right, but I have grown older and you have grown colder. Pink Floyd. Okay? Day after day, night after night, time and time again, she was rejected. Over and over again, she applied. She was working day in, day out. Day in, day out. Day in, day out. You are emphasizing like the frequency, the intense frequency of her working. She tried and tried. You begin your, I went and went. He walked and walked. They ran and ran. So you repeat the verb for emphatic effect. She tried and tried until she succeeded. Do the exercises attached to the lecture. Ask me any questions you have. See you next time. Welcome to lesson 13. In this lesson, we are talking about reported speech. When someone says something, how you are supposed to report it. We'll discuss reporting statements, reporting questions, reporting functions, and reporting verbs. Let's begin. Look, reporting statements. We have a general rule in reporting statements. That doesn't always hold true, but it is a general rule you need to know. We push the tense one stage in the past or to the past. Look, if your direct speech is past simple, reported should be past perfect. Past continuous, change to past perfect continuous. We'll have examples. Past perfect, you cannot change it any further back, obviously. Present simple, switch to past simple. Present continuous, switch to past continuous. Present perfect, switch to past perfect. Present perfect continuous, switch to past perfect continuous. Now, what does that mean? Look at these examples. Direct speech says, or direct quote, I don't know what this is. Okay? Present simple, present simple. Reported says, she said, you could say she said that, or she said she didn't know. Present simple, past simple. What that was, what this is, what that was. Look, these references of this, that, here, there, today, that day, tomorrow, the next day, yesterday, the previous day, these are common sense. You need to be careful with time and space references to change them. Okay, when you are, for example, this person says this one on one day and then you report it a few days later. So this is not this anymore. It is that. Example, direct. We haven't talked for a while. Present perfect. What should you do? We change present perfect. Look, where is it? Yeah. Present perfect to past perfect. Reported. He said they hadn't talked for a while. Haven't talked, hadn't talked for a while. Direct. I'm thinking about it. Present continuous. We change to past continuous. Reported. He told me, look, the most common reporting verbs are say and tell. But the difference between say and tell is that you could say he said that, or you could say he said to me that, But when you use tell, you have to bring an object. You cannot say he told he was coming. No, he told me. He told them. He is telling me. It needs an immediate object. So he told me, you could say that or not, that's optional. He was thinking about it. I am thinking about it. He was thinking about it. Example, direct. We have been running this school for 10 years. Present perfect continuous, we switch to past perfect continuous. Reported. They said they had been running that school, because you're reporting. It is not necessarily, look, if when you are reporting, you are at that school, of course you say this school. It's commonsensical. Use your head. That school for 10 years. What if you have modal verbs? Like in future forms, you have will, you have can, you have may, whatever. How do we report them? Look at this table in here. Will to would, can to could, may to might, must to had to, Might, should, could, and would, they generally don't change. Look at these examples. Direct quote. I will have finished the course in a week. Present perfect. Future perfect. I will have finished. Reported. She said she would have finished the course in a week. All right, so you just change will to would. Direct. We can reach an agreement tonight. Reported. He said they could, change can to could, reach an agreement that night. Of course, if it is still tonight, you say tonight. If you're reporting it like after a few days, you say that night. Direct. He may have thought about the job. Reported. He told me he might have thought about the job. Look, may and might are very similar to each other. They are interchangeable, basically almost always, except for this case in here. When you're reporting, may and might are different. Direct. We must send the invitations now. Reporter. They said they had to send the invitations then. Okay, so it's again common sense. Now, we are done with reporting statements. How do we report questions? We have two different types of questions. Look, you either have a WH question. What are you doing? When is it going to finish? You see, there is an answer to that. Or you have a yes or no question, like, do you like me? Are you enjoying this? The answer is either yes or no, or maybe, sometimes maybe. But anyway, look, if your question is a WH question, you have the general rule first. Push the tense to the past, like the thing that we have already discussed with those tables. But we need to do something else too. Switch syntax from question to a statement. It's very simple. D, direct. What time is it? R, he asked me what time it was. You don't say what time was it, what time it was. We call this a question syntax or a question structure or a question construction. We call this a statement syntax or construction or structure. So look, don't confuse this with indirect questions. An indirect question is different from a reported question. This is an indirect question. You see someone on the street and you say, can I ask you what time it is, sir? Or this is an indirect question. You don't say, can I ask you what time is it? You say, can I ask you what time it is? There is no pushing back the tenses, obviously. But when you are reporting, you need to push back the tenses. Direct. When are they going to arrive? WH question. Reported. She asked. Look, when it is a question, ask is the most common reporting verb. We could say told me, said, but asked, of course, it conveys the message more clearly. She asked when, you use the WH question word, they were going to arrive. Are they? They were. Switching syntax and pushing back the tense. Now let's say your question is a yes or no question. There is one additional step to this one. So 1, push the tense to the past, the general rule for reporting speech. 2, switch syntax from question to a statement, the rule for all questions. But there is a third rule, add if or whether. Look, if or whether, you could use either of them. Maybe some people think that whether is more formal, but it is, there is little difference. D, do you know him? It means direct. Do you know him? It's a yes or no question. Reported. He asked me if I knew him. Okay, so you see, we did all these 3 things in here. Another example. Direct. Did you find a good hotel? She asked whether we had found, did you find past simple? We had found past perfect, a good hotel. Now, we don't have to always push back the tenses, all right? What I'm going to explain now, again, is commonsensical. It should be obvious, but, it could be confusing too. So listen. In two cases, we don't have to push the tense back. In reported speech or in any other thing, any other topic of grammar we are talking about or we discuss, you just need to sound normal and natural. Remember, we have been talking for 70,000 years, but we started writing grammar for like 1,000 years, 100 years, 50 years. So yeah, you need to sound natural and normal and clear. Grammar is there to help us, not to confine us in a bad way. Look, when the statement is still true, you don't have to push back the tense. Or when the reporting verb isn't present. What does that mean? When the statement is still true. Direct. I have 3 brothers. Okay? Reported. She said she had or she has 3 brothers. You could use either one of these. Look, if that person still has 3 brothers, okay, if that person, if we don't know if that person has an additional brother or a new stepbrother or whatever, but when you know that statement is still true, you don't have to push the tense back. D, direct. I'll be there in 5 minutes. Okay? He says, he says, it means you're reporting almost immediately at the same point. So you don't have to push back the tense. He says he'll be here in 5 minutes. You don't have to say he'd be here in 5 minutes. Now, we covered statements and questions. Now we want to discuss reporting functions. What is a function? If you remember in lessons 9 and 10, I suppose, we talked about modal verbs. We use modal verbs to create functions. Look, now, how do we report functions? Look at this. Let's say the function is request. Direct. Could you give me a hand, please? Looks like a question, but it is a request. You could report it like a question. Like instead of saying, could you give me a hand, please, you could say, she asked me if I could give her a hand. But it is a request. It is not a question. So let's report. That is not wrong, but a bit funny. Look, we say, he asked me to give her a hand. Look, infinitive is the most common form when you are reporting functions. Another example for request. D, direct. Could you tell me what time it is? Reported. He asked me the time. You see, you need to be creative about it. And like put the sentence as short as possible. So again, being creative is the most important thing, following the basic rules. Now, let's say our function is suggestion. When your function is suggestion, your form or your mood is subjunctive. I think we discussed subjunctive in lesson 8. What does that mean? Direct. We could go see a film tonight. It's a suggestion. She suggested, you see, you modify the reporting verb. She suggested we see a film that night. Look, we can never use an infinitive after suggest. You could never say he suggested to see a film. That's wrong. So we could say she suggested we see a film. She suggested we should see a film, or she suggested we saw a film. All of them would be fine. Either of them, not all of them together. Direct. Let's have something to eat. He suggested we had something to eat. You see, you could say he suggested we should have something to eat. He suggested we have something to eat, or he suggested we had something to eat. Or to drink, sorry. Other functions. Promise. Direct. I'll never lie to you. Reported. He promised not to ever lie to me. You see, this is the negative infinitive form. Advice. Direct. You'd better see a doctor. Reported. They advised me. You see, sometimes you use an object after the reporting verb, like he told me. They advised me to see a doctor. Demand. Demand is also in subjunctive mood, just like suggestion. Direct. The president must respond to the accusations. Reported. They demanded the president respond. We don't say the president responds, just like suggest. You could say they demanded the president must respond or responded to the accusations. Reporting verbs. We covered a lot of reporting verbs today, like say, tell, ask, suggest, advise, promise. You see, it depends on the situation. We have many. But look, again, the most important thing is you should be creative about it, direct, and you should have an ID. You say, reported, she added that I should have an ID. Because it is should, you don't change it. Direct, yes, I killed him. Reported, he confessed that is optional, almost always optional in here and in here. Okay, he confessed that he had killed him, because this is past simple, this must be past perfect. Direct, I wouldn't go in if I were you. All right, so this is a warning or whatever, or a threat. You could say she warned us not to go in there, the infinitive form, the negative infinitive form, and also the object that must come after the reporting verb. Examples. Direct, yes, the rumors are true. Reported, he confirmed that, optional, the rumors were true, are true, were true. D, even if you answer half of them right, you'll still pass. Like, for example, you are taking a test. If you answer half of the questions right, you'll pass the test. Reported, she reassured me that even if I answered half of the questions right, half of them right, I'd still pass. All right. Do the exercises attached to the lecture. Ask me any questions you have in Q&A. See you next time. Welcome to lesson 14. We are talking about something very important and very interesting. Articles. Okay, this is like the trouble for a lot of English learners. And I admit, look, the best way to learn articles is not like studying grammar. Because, we could just teach you so much. If you really want to master how to use articles or how not to use articles, you need to read and write. You need to listen to the radio, listen to podcasts, listen to native speakers who know how to speak. So it is a matter of practice, not necessarily knowing about the grammar. Yes, all the things I'm going to tell you today, you're going to memorize them in no time. But it is not enough. You need to read. You need to read good books and good articles. We'll talk about definite article, the indefinite article, a and an, and zero article. It means when you shouldn't use any article at all. Definite article, the. In what situations we use a definite, we use the, there's only one. We use the. For classes or categories or groups, but in different forms. Look, the tiger is an endangered species. When you say, of course, look, you could say, I saw a tiger yesterday, the tiger was sleeping. That is like the basic use of the, when you are mentioning something that you have already mentioned before. This is different. When you say the tiger, you're talking about the species of tiger. You're talking about all the tigers in the world. But remember, your verb is singular. Look at this one, another example. The computer. We're talking about like the technology of computers. All the computers around the globe revolutionized humans' life. Again, your verb in here, you could not tell, but your verb must be, when you use a noun after the, to identify a class, your verb needs to be in singular form, if it is relevant. Now look at this one. The rich, the French. The difference between these two and these two is that these two are nouns, but these two are adjectives, rich and French. But we still use the with them the same to refer to a group or a class or a category, but with a big difference. We say the rich have. When you use an adjective, your verb is in plural form. The rich, it means rich people. Like, it is not very, how do I say, eloquent to say rich people do this, poor people do that, French people do this, Chinese people do that. You say the French, the Chinese, the rich, the poor, the educated. The rich have to pay more tax. The French smoke a lot. It means French people. Okay. When something or someone is unique, you use the. We say, the Queen of Denmark. She is the Queen of Denmark. I don't know which one, but yeah, she's one of them. I put the in parentheses because it is optional. You could also use zero article. You could say Queen of Denmark, President of the United States. But you could also say the President of the United States. Either is acceptable. The sun, when you are talking about within the context of the solar system. Otherwise, sun obviously is not unique. The moon, the same. If you lived on Jupiter, you'd have how many moons? Like 12, I think, whatever. It is not unique anymore. The President of France, you could say the President of France or President of France. Musical instruments in general. Again, I'm not saying that I bought a guitar yesterday, the guitar is beautiful. That's the basic use of articles. When you're talking about musical instruments in general, like Jane plays the flute, we are not talking about a particular flute. We're talking about like a musical instrument. But we don't say Jane plays flute. We say Jane plays the flute. The guitar is my favorite instrument. We're not talking about like a specific guitar. The guitar is my favorite instrument. I would like to learn to play the piano. Again, not a specific piano. The piano. Emphasis. When you rise your tone. I think we talked about it in our lesson on emphasis. I saw the Nicole Kidman on the street yesterday. You see, we are saying that is not like a different Nicole Kidman. That was the Nicole Kidman. This is the place for a nice holiday. Okay, this is the place for a nice holiday. You are emphasizing using the definite article the. Now, some geographic features of the world. With rivers, we use the Nile, the Thames in London, mountain ranges, the Andes, the Alp, the Himalayas, but not mountains. Like we say Everest, Mount Everest. We never say the Mount Everest, only for mountain ranges. Seas and oceans, the Pacific Ocean, the Caspian Sea, but no lakes, all right? Directions, we say, let's go to the south, the northwest. Areas, the Middle East, the Antarctica, the Arctica, and so on. Some countries, the United States, the Netherlands, the Czech Republic, the UK, and some others. It comes with practice. Post-modified place names. When you modify, let me explain it to you on an example. Look, you say Leeds University. This is what we call pre-modified because you are modifying university. University is a general term. Now you are saying that which university? You are bringing it before the general term. That is why we call it pre-modified. In pre-modified situations, we don't use the. But look at this one. Instead of saying Leeds University, you could bring the university first and then modify it. University of Leeds. When you do this, we call it post-modified. And you need to use the University of Leeds. London Tower, pre-modified. The Tower of London, post-modified. Now, indefinite article, a or an. Jobs and occupations. We say Natasha is an architect. She is a big artist. Like, we use them all the time. Sometimes it means per. Instead of saying $5 per kilo or 1 kilo, $5 a kilo. 3 times per week. 3 times in 1 week, 3 times a week. unknown people's names. Look, you have a secretary. Your secretary says, "A Miss Robinson called you." Of course, we know that we shouldn't say "A Miss Robinson," "A Mr. X," but you are saying that that person was unknown. That person said her name was Miss Robinson, but I don't know who Miss Robinson is or was. So you say to your employer, "A Miss Robinson called for you." All right, zero article. We know that. With names, we don't use any articles. I'm reading a book about Picasso, like Picasso, the famous painter. But compare it with these ones. She bought a Picasso at the auction. We're not talking about like a person, the person Picasso. When you say a Picasso, a Vivaldi, the music, when you say we saw a Stanley Kubrick today, like we are talking about a film of Stanley Kubrick's. She bought a Picasso at the auction, a painting by Picasso. The Smiths, when you want to refer to a family, you say the Smiths. You put a plural S at the end of the name, and then you add the. You mean this is a family. The Smiths are coming for dinner, a family. That was it about articles. Do the attached exercises. Ask me any questions you have. See you next time. Welcome to lesson 15. In this lesson, we are going to talk about relative clauses. All right? What are relative clauses? I'll explain. We'll talk about defining and non-defining relative clauses, relative pronouns, who or whom. This could be a confusing one for a lot of English learners. And omitting relative pronouns. It means how or when could you remove it from the sentence. Let's begin. What is a relative clause? Relative clauses are dependent clauses. We like dependent clauses are the clauses that, like in a conditional, we say if you do that, that is a dependent clause. Or when they arrived, that is a dependent clause. A dependent clause is a clause which is not complete without another clause, which we call like a main clause of the sentence. They start with a relative pronoun. These are the most common relative pronouns. We use who and whom for persons. We use that for persons and things. Which for things. When, time. We'll have a lot of examples, so don't worry. Where for place. Why for reason. And whose for possession. Okay. Let's see what a relative clause is first, and how many types of relative clauses we have. We have two main types of relative clauses, and it is crucially important to know the difference between them, because if you don't know the difference between them, many times, you cannot understand a sentence which contains a relative clause. Okay, so a defining relative clause. This is just an example of a defining relative clause, and this is an example of a non-defining relative clause. In our future slides, I'm going to explain exactly what they are. Look, I need a job that suits my skills and needs. Look, that suits my skills and needs, we call it a relative clause. That in here is a relative pronoun. So that is a pronoun. You know, what is the definition of a pronoun? A pronoun is a word that replaces a noun or a noun phrase. And this that is replacing a job or job. All right? When you say, I need a job, what job? That suits my skills and needs. Because this in here, we are defining what kind of job we are talking about. But look at in here, it is non-defining. We are humans. That's it. That's the end of your sentence. Now I want to give additional information. Comma. This comma is very important. We'll talk about it in detail. Which means we all possess a mammal's instincts. Okay? It adds additional information, extra information to your sentence. And it comes with a comma all the time. Look. Let's get deeper into the definition of a defining relative clause and a non-defining relative clause. Let's start with a defining relative clause. Specifies one item in a group of similar items. That's why actually we call it defining relative clauses, because they are defining something. Look, I received a letter. You could ask, which letter? a letter which was sent by a close friend. Oh, that letter you're talking about. So we are specifying one item in a group of similar items. Like letter is a general term. You need to define it using a defining relative clause. Look, another example. I sold all the books. What books? That I knew I would never read. That is why, because we are defining a term, we are clarifying which item in a group of similar items we are talking about. We call it a defining relative clause. Now, what is a non-defining relative clause? They give additional information about something that doesn't need defining. It means it has already been defined. It means in the mind of the listener or the reader, it is defined. So all these are relative, guys. Look, sometimes one relative clause could be defining in the mind of one writer. It could become a non-defining in the mind of another writer. So it's up to you if it needs to be defining or non-defining. Listen, look, by 4:30, comma, look, comma, must be there in a non-defining relative clause. Actually, sometimes we'll have examples. It is impossible to tell if a relative clause is defining or non-defining without the comma. Okay? We'll have examples. By 4:30, you don't say which 4:30. In the mind of your audience or the listener or the person who is speaking to you, 4:30 is 4:30 today. Comma, which was almost closing time, or for example 4:30 at 4:30 on some day in the past, and we close it with a comma. Nearly all paintings had been sold. Another example, this is my friend's house. Okay, you don't say which house. This is my friend's house. It is already defined. Now you want to give additional information, comma, which he bought about 20 years ago. So if you want to check, if you want to make sure that this is a non-defining or defining, remove the clause from the sentence. If it is still complete, it means it is non-defining. Look, by 4:30, nearly all the paintings had been sold. Complete. This is my friend's house. It is already complete. You are giving extra or additional information. Use commas to separate them from the rest of the sentence. If it comes in the middle of a sentence, you put the clause between two commas, comma, this comma and this comma. If it comes at the end of the sentence, it comes between a comma and a full stop or a period. Look, why do I say it is crucially important to know if it is a relative clause defining or non-defining? And if you remember, I told you sometimes without the commas, it is impossible to tell. Okay, let's say the commas are not there. Or why are they so important? Because they change the meaning of the sentence. Look at this example. My sister, comma, who lives in Spain, comma, has 2 beautiful dogs. This is a non-defining relative clause. Okay, it could be defining. We could tell because we can see the commas in here. All right, now look at this very same sentence without commas. My sister who lives in Spain has 2 beautiful dogs. Just by adding 2 commas in here, you are changing the meaning of the sentence. What does that mean? We say this is non-defining. Let's remove it from the sentence. We say, my sister has 2 beautiful dogs. What does that mean? It means you have only one sister. Okay, now let's remove the commas. My sister who lives in Spain. Oh, you have more than one sister. So your sister who lives in Spain has 2 beautiful dogs. You are defining which sister. In here, you are not defining which sister. You are saying my sister. You only have one sister. So it's important to know, and it's important to know how to use defining and non-defining relative clauses. Let's talk about that. All right, that is a relative pronoun. That can replace which and who in defining clauses only. You cannot use it instead of which and who in non-defining relative clauses. Remember that. Example, do you know the girl who, this is defining, or that lives next door? All right, and this is your relative clause, obviously. I love a conversation. What conversation? Which or that is inspiring. that cannot be used after prepositions, even in defining clauses. Look at this example. It was a service for which I'm really grateful. All right? Sometimes we use it like this. You cannot say it was a service for that I'm really grateful. That is wrong. So don't bring prepositions before that in relative clauses. Who or whom? This is an interesting one. This is actually the material of a lot of jokes, even among native speakers. Because a lot of native speakers, most of them, don't know when to use whom. Maybe that is the reason today, like in spoken English, it doesn't matter if you use who or whom. Yeah, it does matter if you use whom incorrectly. That is ridiculous. That is why they say, in spoken English, just use who, and you will be fine. But in written English, in formal texts, that is a whole different story. If you use who instead of whom in a written formal text, it means you don't know what you're talking about. All right, look. Whom is used in object clauses. Who is used in subject clauses, and whom is the object of your sentence. What does that mean? Look, he was a person whom everybody or everyone loved. We say, I love him, or I love that. That is the object of your sentence. You are replacing it with a relative pronoun, so you need to use an object relative pronoun. Whom. You could use who in spoken English. Or for example, like a casual email or a casual text. It's fine to use who. Whom is the only correct choice if it follows a preposition. Okay. Even in spoken English, it is wrong to use who after a preposition. All right? You either use whom or you change the structure of your sentence to remove the preposition before who or whom. Look at these examples. We say, to whom am I speaking? You cannot say to who am I speaking. It's wrong. But let's say I'm not comfortable with this structure. I don't want to use whom. My friends make fun of me. So bring the preposition to the end of your sentence. Then use who. Instead of to whom am I speaking, you could say who am I speaking to. This is correct. Another example. This is the lady who we had lunch with. All right? You brought the preposition at the end of the sentence. That's why you could use who. It's fine. But look here. This is the lady with whom we had lunch. You cannot say with who we had lunch. And this is, this is a better sentence in terms of being grammatically correct. Believe me. All right. Let's talk about when. When is another relative pronoun we use to replace a time or a time phrase. An example or two examples of when in a defining relative clause. There is hardly a moment when, what moment you are defining it? A moment when I don't think of you. Another example defining. Call me at a time when everybody is ready. Now, non-defining. Come back at 4. Okay, you don't ask which 4. Come back at 4 when I won't be so busy. Additional information. Another example. Let's meet at the weekend when no one is busy with work. Now, where? Where we use for places. Defining. This is the street. Which street? Where I live. Let's find a place. Which place? Where no one knows us. Now, non-defining. I stopped in the city center. You don't say which city center. I stopped in the city center. Okay? Now, additional information, comma, where my sister has a shop. They arrived at the hotel. We say the hotel. So obviously we know which hotel. We don't need to define it. Comma, where they could finally take some rest. Confusions with where. Look, I'm going to explain it on the examples. Where could be replaced by in which. Why do we say it? You could say in which or at which. This is the restaurant. You know, the restaurant is a place, all right, where we dine every night. Now, you could replace where with in which. This is the restaurant in which we dine every night. If you replaced where with in which and it was still correct, it means you should use where or in which. But look at this example. So, this is the restaurant which makes great pasta. Why did we use which? Restaurant is a place, because in here we are not talking about the restaurant as a place. We are talking about the restaurant as an entity that makes great pasta. So, when this confusion occurs, you could use in which. If in which makes sense, it means you need to use where. If it doesn't make sense, it means you need to use something else. Look here. You cannot say, this is the restaurant in which makes great pasta. It doesn't make sense. Whose is an interesting one. We use whose for possession. Defining. Several guests whose rooms had been broken into complained to the manager. Look, whose is very easy. The word after whose belongs to the word before whose. It means the rooms belong to the guests. This is how you could tell if you are supposed to use who, whose, whatever else. Another example. There was a crying woman at the police station whose child had been missing. You see, the child belongs to the crying woman at the police station. That's why we use whose. Now, non-defining. I regularly see my cousin. Okay, my cousin. Whose house, because the house belongs to my cousin. Whose house is right across from mine. Now, which? Defining. I need a jacket, which or that, because it is defining, goes with my shoes. Now, non-defining. Look, it could replace a noun or a noun phrase. Example, I would like to buy this car. A car is a noun. Comma, this is non-defining. Which will be my first car. Which could also replace a whole situation. Look, he hasn't called me for 3 days. Okay? The fact that he hasn't called me for 3 days is, which is replacing that. Which has made me really suspicious. So you are using which to replace the entire situation. Sometimes we use which with a preposition before it and a noun after it. I watched the play until the end of the first act. Non-defining. At which point, this which is referring to the end of the first act. At which point, I felt I had seen enough. Another example. A warning alarm will go off when there is a fire, comma, non-defining. In which case, which is referring to when there is a fire. In which case, break the glass and push the button. The interesting thing is, look, let's say we finish the sentence here. Let's say a warning alarm will go off when there is a fire. If you put a full stop in there, you could say, in that case, because you are starting a new sentence that is not a relative clause anymore. But this is a relative clause. You are using a comma. Your sentence is not finished. Come back tonight, comma, by which time he'll be deeply asleep. Now, you don't have to use a noun after which. Sometimes we just use a preposition. Here is the key, comma, by which you could open the entrance door. Now, what? What means the thing or things which, all right? I still cannot believe what you told me yesterday. So it is actually, I still cannot believe things which or things that you told me yesterday. What you should do, it means the thing you should do, is write directly to God and ask Him your questions. Omitting the relative pronouns. Sometimes we can remove the relative pronouns from the sentence. All right? Look, especially we do that in spoken English. Who, which, and that. Only in defining relative clauses. Remember, when there is a new subject, what does that mean? Look, if it is a non-defining relative clause, you don't touch it. You cannot remove it. But if it is a defining and you have who, which, or that, it means you're either talking about a person or persons or a thing or things. That is the house which or that I used to live in. You look at it, it is defining. And you see, immediately after the pronoun, we have a new subject, I. That's the man who or that I was telling you about. You see, immediately after the pronoun, there is a subject, I. It means you could remove the pronoun from the sentence. We could say, that's the man I was telling you about. That's the house I used to live in. He was a person who or that everyone, new subject, regarded as trustworthy. He was a person who or that everyone, a new subject, regarded as trustworthy. So you could remove it because you have a new subject and it is defining. You could say, he was a person everyone regarded as trustworthy. It doesn't matter. In spoken English, written English, it's fine. You could remove it. He is not someone who or that you, new subject, could get on with. You could say, or you could write, he is not someone you could get on with. Now, omitting who or which plus be. This is a different situation. That's why we call it reducing the relative clause, or we call the relative clause a reduced relative clause. It is not just omitting or leaving out the pronoun. It is pronoun and the following to be verb. Look, Jim was the only one of his platoon who had not been captured. So we have who, and we have a form of to be, had been. All right, negative is negative. You cannot change it. You cannot remove it. So you could do this. Jim was the only one of his platoon not captured. In here, she pointed to the man who was standing by the door. Who was could be omitted from the sentence. Be careful with this one. It is not always possible to do this, and it comes mostly with practice. It means listening to native speakers, to good texts, to people who know very well English, and it comes with practice and experience, because you cannot always do this. All right, so be careful. And it is sometimes comes with the past participle of the main verb, and sometimes it is the ing form. You see, she pointed to the man who was standing by the door. You could say, she pointed to the man standing by the door. So, she pointed to the man standing by the door. Be very careful. Do this, especially when it is ing. Don't ever do it in non-defining relative clauses, because it completely changes the meaning of your sentence. For example, let's say this is non-defining. She pointed to the man, comma, in here, not here. This is obvious. If you point to the man, comma, is standing by the door. If you put a comma in here, it means she was standing by the door. All right? Not the man. So be careful with this one. Do the exercises, the attached exercises to this lecture, and ask me any questions you have in Q&A. See you next time. Welcome to our last lesson, lesson 16. In which we are talking about gerunds and infinitives, a very, very important topic in grammar. We'll define gerunds and then infinitives, and then I will clarify some points of confusion. Let's talk about gerunds. What is a gerund? All right, look, gerunds are made of verb plus ing, but be careful, okay? What is the difference between a gerund and a verb? Gerunds are used as nouns, not verbs. Example, we say, she likes reading. What is the verb of your sentence? Likes. Reading is working as a noun in your sentence. It is working as the object of your sentence, to be precise. So it is a gerund. But look at this. She is reading. Reading is your main verb. If it is your main verb, we call it a present participle. It is not a gerund because it is working as a verb. So be careful with this distinction. When do we use gerunds? One of the uses of gerunds is after prepositions. Look, we say, thanks for listening to my speech. Preposition for listening. Congratulations on finishing your course. All right? He is thinking of buying a new phone. So after preposition, we could use gerunds. You don't have to, but This is one of the situations in which you use gerunds. Another situation where we use gerund is as the subject or object of a sentence. We say, playing football is a fun activity. Playing football is your subject, so we could use a gerund. I despise wasting my time on bad films. So you despise something, it is the object of your sentence, you could use a gerund. Now, our main focus today is gerunds after certain verbs. Look, after these verbs, and many more, alright, but these are the most common ones, we use a gerund. Avoid, face, finish, suggest, feel like, give up, keep up, leave off, look forward to. We don't say I'm looking forward to see you. That is a common mistake in English learners. I'm looking forward to seeing you. Can't stand, risk, resent, practice, postpone, miss, mind, mention, involve, excuse, escape, detest, deny, delay, contemplate, appreciate, and many more. Example. Do you feel like, feel like something? As a matter of fact, feel is your verb and like is your preposition, all right? So it is not a certain verb as we put it, but anyway, when you see feel like, you need to use a gerund. Do you feel like going out for a walk? Example, she should give up smoking. You don't say give up to smoke or give up smoke, or it doesn't make sense. I don't mind doing the dishes. Now, we covered gerunds. Now let's talk about infinitives. Infinitive is to plus space form, to go, to watch, to see, and so on. So, one of the first uses of infinitives is that we use them after adjectives. Look, it is not so easy as adjective. It is not so easy to find a good teacher. Tell me about it. She is doing her best. It doesn't need to be in the regular form, the normal form of the adjective. It could be the superlative form. It could be the comparative form. She is doing her best to avoid hurting him. Most men find it difficult. Adjective, to ask for directions. Now, infinitives after certain verbs. This is a list of the most common verbs after which we use an infinitive. Agree. For example, we say she agreed to do that. Appear, arrange, attempt, ask, choose, dare, decide, demand, deserve, expect, fail, grow, happen, hope, hurry, learn, long. Long is not long or short. Long is a verb here. Manage, neglect, offer, pay, plan, pretend, promise, refuse, seem, struggle, threaten, want, and many more. Example. Both parties have agreed to continue negotiations. She is struggling to find work. I've decided to cut down on my drinking. Now, infinitive or gerund, sometimes in some situations, it is possible to use either the gerund or the infinitive, okay? Sometimes it doesn't make a difference, sometimes it does. In this case, look, after certain verbs, we could use gerunds or infinitives with little change in meaning. When it says little change, it means practically the same. Example, look, this is the list of the most common verbs in this category. Like, love, hate, prefer, can't bear, attempt, begin, continue, intend, propose, and start. We say, he continued running for another hour. Or you could say, he continued to run for another hour. These two sentences are practically the same, all right? They mean almost the same. Now, sometimes it makes a big difference if you use a gerund or an infinitive after a certain verbs. We have some specific examples today to give you. The first verb is try. Look, you could use a gerund after try or you could use an infinitive after try, but you need to know the meanings will be completely different. Look at these examples. She tried to open infinitive, the window, but it was stuck. You use an infinitive after try when the action you are describing involves some difficulty. All right? For example, I tried to see that film, but that was a terrible film. It means I couldn't finish it. It means there was some difficulty involved in that situation. Now, have you tried taking, Gerund, these pills for your insomnia? Doing something new or different. For example, you're giving advice to a friend. You say, for example, try getting help from a friend. Try seeing a doctor. You are giving advice. You are proposing different solutions or remedies for a friend. Another verb, which is in the same category, which makes a big change, is forget. Example. When you say, I forgot to talk to her at the party, it means I didn't talk to her. But when you say, I forgot talking to her at the party, it means you did talk to her at the party, but forgot about it later. You see the difference in here? A big one. Another verb in the same category is remember. Look at this example. We say, please remember to water the plants. It means first remember, then water the plants. Now, it gets the other way around when you use a gerund. When you say, I remember watering the plants, it means I watered the plants and now I remember it. You see, it's the opposite. The next verb in the same category is go on. It's a phrasal verb. It means continue. When you say she went on talking about politics, gerund, it means she was already talking about politics and then she continued talking about politics, about the same thing that she was talking about. But look at this. When you say, then she went on to talk about sports, it means she stopped talking about politics and started talking about sports or something else. All right? So you don't need to say she has stopped doing that and then started doing that. By just using the right form of the verb, you are giving clear information to your audience. The same category, mean as a verb. When you say I didn't mean to offend you, when you use an infinitive after mean, in here, mean means to intend. It means I didn't intend to offend you. But look at this. Being a single mother means dealing, a gerund after mean, dealing with multiple challenges at the same time. In here, means involve. All right? The same category, regret. When you say, we regret to inform you that all flights have been cancelled, or when you receive a rejection letter, God forbid, it always starts with, unfortunately, we regret to inform you, I regret to let you know. It means they want to give you some bad news. So when you use infinitive after regret, you are giving bad news. You're preparing the mind of the listeners or the audience for the bad news. Now, when you say she regrets having met him in the first place, a gerund after regret, it means that's a real regret. A real regret for a past event. The same category, another verb, stop. Let's say, I stopped seeing her months ago. You use a gerund after a stop. It means ending an activity. When you quit smoking, you say, I stopped smoking. It means you finished, you ended an activity. You're not doing that anymore. But look at this one. She ran for half an hour, then stopped to have a drink of water. So infinitive after a stop, it means you pause an activity to do another activity and then go back to your first activity. Verbs of perception. What is perception? Whatever you perceive from your surroundings using one of your five senses, we call it perception. But look at these here, okay? See and watch. These three particular verbs of perception are very important to know. Look at this example. When you say, I saw her dancing when I was passing her window, when you use a gerund after saw, after watch, see, and hear, it means you are witnessing a part of an activity, not the entire activity. Now look at this one. I saw her dance. No infinitive. We call it bare infinitive. It means infinitive without to, or we call it the base form. I call it the base form. It's much clearer. I saw her dance and it was beautiful. It means I saw the whole thing. It means I stayed there and I watched her dance. I saw everything and it was beautiful. It means when you experience a whole event. Now, we talked about certain verbs after which we use a gerund and other certain verbs after which we use infinitives. There are other verbs after which we use the base form. Okay, the most common ones are help, make, and let. We say, would you help me carry the suitcase? Help is a verb after which you could use an infinitive or a base form. Little change in meaning or no change in meaning at all. Would you help me carry the suitcase? Or would you help me to carry the suitcase? Both correct. They made me wait for an hour. Make. I won't let you ruin my holiday. Base form after let. But pay attention. If you use make in a passive sentence, you need to follow it with an infinitive. It is not an exception. It is not. Because this infinitive is actually coming because you have a to-be verb in here. So he was made to leave. So it is not about make. This infinitive is not about make. It is about your sentence being passive. But be careful with this one, all right? So yeah, it could be confusing. And that's it. Congratulations on finishing this course. I hope you have learned a lot. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask me in the Q&A sections, and please do the exercises attached to all and every lecture. Take care.